Daddy's back, baby. Happy Monday, diehards, degenerate gamblers, MMA fans. Welcome back to the Die Hard MMA podcast. This is the UFC Seattle edition of the show, and we are rocking the baby blues. We broke out the money chain necklace. It wasn't a big enough win. It wasn't a big enough win yet for me to bust out the money gun, but it is a step in the right direction. We're finally getting a little good vibes. We're finally feeling okay. And whoo, monkey off the back. We needed that one. Let's freaking go. It was a good weekend last weekend for us, and we're finally going to try to build some momentum here going into 2025. Welcome into the chat. How's everybody doing? We've got Austrian School Swift. We've got George Ray Pro in the chat. My guy First Comment hanging out here. We've got Grateful Dude, my man Dream, MMA Clips, Dixon Cider, the Jewish Better saying oy vey in the chat already. We've got Stephen Code, Bufo on the beat, my guy, long time no see. Ethan Hershey says, let's F this card up, and I agree. Let's indeed do that. I don't want to drop the F-bomb, though. I think it's like the first 5 minutes of the YouTube show. You're not allowed to curse. Otherwise, you get just blasted by the algorithm. So I'll drop the F-bomb for you a little bit later. Louis Mack Jr., the It Factor MMA. Everybody rolling in here. Everybody feeling good. How we doing tonight on this Monday night? It was a fantastic, fantastic card, and I'm looking forward for the first time in a long time to touching ever so briefly on the recap of last week's card, right? A lot went okay for us, so we can actually talk about it with a smile on our face. But before I do that, I might as well bring in this week's guest. He can help me recap the card, and we can get straight on into it. One of your favorites, one of my favorites, a half of the club and sub equation, none other than MMA Fox, my guy John Stargaryen joining us on the show. John, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm good. Pumped to be on here. Pumped you had me back. It was nice. There was a good weekend for us both. So starting on a hot note.
Absolutely. Good to see you, man. Good to see you. How'd you end up doing last week? How was your UFC Vegas 102 experience?
Well, my experience was I was at a birthday dinner for my friend's wife. So I saw almost none of the card. I did
The worst.
see, yeah, the worst. And I managed the only real fight I caught a piece of was seeing my Ishmael Bonefiend bet get stopped by Dr. Stoppage. But otherwise, I went up 2.8 units. It was a pretty good card for me. So I'm pretty pumped about it. I'm pumped to talk about this week.
Hey, a win is a win, my guy. It's the what the Mr. Incredible meme. Win is win. Like doesn't matter if it's small, big, or middle, man. If you get that dub, that's all that counts. I did pretty good, +6 units for myself, which a really, really nice outing for me. Kind of needed it. I've been getting my ass whooped up and down the UFC for the last couple of weeks to start the year. And of course, last year, just my phenomenal falling flat on my face for an entire calendar. So this one felt good. The Jacqueline Cavalcanti fight went about exactly as predicted. She could not step on it enough to get the finish. Julia Avila, just known for being tough as nails her entire career. But it was her retirement fight. And you could tell, man, like body language all week. It was just, she was not into this thing. I'm a little surprised Cavalcanti wasn't able to get that stoppage in that fight just because of how Avila was not all the way there. But I think we have to kind of reassess Jacqueline Cavalcanti. I have firmly placed her in the Sean Strickland category, man. She will do whatever it takes to get the win. She's just never going to kill anybody.
Yeah, I had bet Avila by decision actually in that fight because of that, to be honest. Like Cavalcanti, she like checks every box. She's tall, she's long, a lot of volume, but she doesn't grapple. She has no power, and she's not particularly assertive. I'm pretty high on her, but yeah, to your point, she's gonna she's going to take an L as like a minus 600, like sometime soon against someone she should not take an L against. It's coming.
You could feel it. I actually thought Julia might be the one for me. I was this close to taking that very terrible dog play because of the odds being so wide. And then, like I said, man, just the interviews, the body language, like Jacqueline Cavalcanti is staring daggers at this woman at face-offs, and she's going, "Hi, baby," to her daughter in the crowd. That's like, "You ain't here, lady. Like, this is not the one you're showing up for." So
but she's got her like dead to rights, where they got cut gashed open on her face and still not opening up. Like, you can stare daggers, but if you're just gonna play patty cake in the cage, eventually someone's gonna get you that shouldn't.
Right? Absolutely. No, it's going to happen. And I talked about this on my Monday show last week, man. They tried to rob her twice already. It's just never overly impressive. Even when she's winning the fight, bell to bell, there's a judge out there that's going to be like, nope. So it's not going to take much to rob her. It really won't. Walter Walker and Don'Tale Mayes just bury Don'Tale at this point. He came in career worst shape. I called that out on my Friday show. I got on Walter Walker as a parlay piece, which was nice in the end. But my God, missing the Walter Walker by heel hook. I saw basically everybody on Twitter just blowing up at 50-1 about their heel hook bets. And I heard Tim talk about it on Narcos Lambo Plays show. I heard Tim mention it, and I was like, man, I should look into that. But it was down to like 16-1 or something like that from the 50-1 opener because everybody had smashed it already. And I was like it ship sailed. I just let it go, and I still feel bad about it because at 16-1, it still would have been nice.
Well, what's funny? I had a max bet on Walter this week, which was great, but like, I saw Tim talk about it, and my concern was, Mike, he went for it with 10 seconds left against Tafa. That's very intelligent, going for that kind of a submission with 10 seconds. I'm like, he's not going to go for early in a round. I'm like on the way to dinner with my wife in the back of an Uber watching that fight on my phone, and he drops for a heel hook 30 seconds into the round. I'm like, what are you doing? Stop. What is going on? I mean, it worked out, but it scared the shit out of me. Sorry.
Right?
I know, first 5 minutes of the show.
No, you're good. You're good. We're at the 7-minute mark, so we're fine. Go ahead, let it fly, man. But what is the UFC doing at heavyweight, man? Where are they gonna swap out? Like, bring Jairzinho Frozenstrike back and cut Don'Tale Mayes. Like, can we make that trade? Is that possible?
Did they cut Jairzinho?
They cut Jairzinho, man. After his last fight, they let him go.
That's interesting. You know what's weird about that? And I don't want to like overly prolong your. So I saw someone put a tweet out late last week, and it was showing the number of fighters in each division. Heavyweight only has 30 fighters in it as it is. Yep. How are you cutting Jairzinho Rozenstruik while like Hamdi Abdel-Wahab and Don'Tale Mayes have roster spots?
That's exactly what I said.
Like, what are we doing?
What are we doing? Like, you don't have a division, and you dropped a top 10 guy when we've got these dudes filling up the rest of that roster. I get he's not the most exciting at all times, but he would bury Hamdi and Don'Tale Mayes. What are we doing?
They need to just let someone like Jairzinho fight only cans. Like, I know we want to make them go up the ranks, but everybody likes when he ices someone in 30 seconds, Like, why can't we just have that happen? Have it be the curtain jerker on, like, every big fight night card.
Like, why are you tossing guys like Don'Tale and Hamdi, the bums of the heavyweight division? Give those guys to Jairzinho. You'll get all the highlight reel KOs you want. It's easy, man. Anyway, moving along. Vince Morales and Elijah Smith. I missed the early boat on Vince Morales, and I'm actually kind of glad I did. I ended up using the Morales plus 3.5 spread on DraftKings as my parlay piece with Walter Walker for close to even money. I actually really liked that play, and it's funny because I fully intended to attack that plus 3.5 spread when he was a plus 180 underdog, that I was like, I'll pass on the money line, but I was going to play the plus 3.5 spread pretty aggressively. And I was expecting like a minus 145, minus 150 on it. But with all the money that flooded in on him, he went off as like a plus 120 dog after all that line movement.
I think it was like Pick'em, dude. I think he went off Pick'em. Like, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, it got like, dude, the crazy thing is I was in a similar boat as you. It's funny. I texted Gambus last Sunday and I was like, hey, take a look at the wrestling in the Vince Morales fight and let me know what you think. It was like plus 190 at the time. He didn't get back to me in time, and it went to plus 140. And I was like, I can't do it now. And then I was watching at dinner. I had it on the table on silent, and I saw the end of round 3. He had like 2 minutes in a choke series, and I'm like, I'm such an idiot. I should have just taken the plus 120. But I guess he lost. So.
Dude, I could not be more impressed with Elijah Smith. Kid kept a cool head. His striking looked way better as far as like the methodology of his striking in this fight. His submission defense and toughness checked out, and he didn't gas. Like all the things that I was like poking holes in why this kid is not an elite tier prospect and could drop this fight to Vince Morales, he did all of them the right way. So I was very impressed with Elijah Smith. I do kind of wish there was 10 more seconds on the clock because that Vince Morales comeback bulldog choke at the end would have just set the place on fire. It would have been hilarious.
Smith's 22. He's 22 also. You know, like I had similar concerns to you, but 22 years old with that kind of athleticism, like he's got a pretty high ceiling.
Yeah. I completely agree. That's one of those ones where I felt like he's got a high ceiling. I like him as a prospect. And I said the words, just not yet. He's just too young. You know what I mean? So I didn't think he was going to pass this test, but now I'm even higher on him since he did. Gabriel Bonfim ruined my dog of the night. I had Chaos Williams. Plus 190 was my dog play for the evening. I actually thought he was starting to land a little bit there at the end of round 2. He had Gabriel Bonfim kind of shooting for his life after eating a couple of shots, and that's where I wanted to be, man. I wanted to see round 3. I wanted Bonfim to be a little rattled. I wanted Bonfim to not like getting hit quite so much and get me towards the end of this fight and see what happens. But that choke, man, Bonfim just he's savvy on the ground. He's got a hell of a tight squeeze on him. We've got a brand new meme, Chaos Williams' reaction to getting choked out. I've never seen somebody screaming like that after being submitted, by the way. Usually they're just asleep, but it was terrifying. His eyes were rolled back. His mouth was hanging open. It was cadaver-esque. Impressed by Bonfim's performance. Maybe we had it right all along that the younger Bonfim is actually the good Bonfim. I was starting to teeter and maybe thought the older one might be better.
Is Gabriel the younger one?
Gabe's the younger one. Yeah, he's 27.
Okay. Just the bigger one. All right.
He's the bigger one. Yeah. Bigger and younger. Esteban did exactly what I wanted him to and then gave me a heart attack. I said, just don't leave your neck out there for Jesus Aguilar to get a hold of. And he had me fighting for my life for like 3 or 4 different times in that fight. It was the scariest chalk lay I've ever made. And then, of course, he gasses out in round 3 again. I'm like, bro, you've got a man who's pulling guard on you, who's more than willing to go to the ground, who you're twice the size of. You should not be cardio deathing in this fight the way you did last time out. And sure enough, he did. Esteban is going to ruin somebody's parlay very, very soon because he can't strike. I thought he was going to do like at least a little bit of distance striking with like a jab and teep kicks. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And then damn near gets finished by Jesus Aguilar again, but manages to hang on for the decision. So thank God, first leg of my big 3-leg parlay. Did you have anything involvement on either of those two?
I had the over in the Esteban fight, which I mean, I did not see that fight, but it's weird because, like, to your point, I kind of feel similarly about Cavalcante. Like, we know you're going to get a good 9 minutes out of Esteban, but I even felt like he was kind of lucky to win the Johnson fight. Like, if Charles had just pulled the trigger more at the end of round 2 in that fight, he would have won a unanimous decision, you know?
Yeah.
And it's only a matter, because to your point, he doesn't strike and he doesn't really throw much ground and pound. It's only a matter of time with like the new judging meta till he drops a really greasy decision to someone he shouldn't.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. And Jeff K just nail on the head here. As bad as you can possibly look in a win. Couldn't say it better. And yo, we got to pause the show here. Shout out my guy, Chalky Bets, with the $99 dono. Thank you very much, my friend. Massive shout out. He says, can I get a favorite that each of you like for the next card? Now, Chalky, I assume you're talking about this card, right? UFC Seattle. We're about to go through and break the whole thing down, but thanks to you and your dono, I feel comfortable throwing out a name here for you. Spoilers, you know, for everybody. I kind of like Anthony Hernandez. I've always been a hater of the Brendan Allen side of things. I feel like Allen kind of got his shot at the elite of the division and failed it. And I think Anthony Hernandez is getting this test is like the next, okay, he lost, your turn, like you get a shot. And I just think the cardio difference is going to make the fight. So I like Anthony Hernandez. John, do you have somebody you feel comfortable?
I would also go with Anthony Hernandez. I was going to say Alonzo Menifield, but the line moved about 40 cents since I bet it. So
we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we will talk about that one. So I'll say Anthony Hernandez as well. Fluffy's my guy. You know, I am, and he should win this fight. We'll talk about it, but he should definitely win this fight.
So quick correction. Chalky's saying the card after Seattle.
Oh, the card
now
after
the trick
Seattle.
here, Chalky, the trick here is I have not done my research. So thanks to your donation, I will give you a name.
I'll give you a dog.
you got to know I don't have like all my work done here. So I would say Chepe Mariscal, right? We're looking at UFC Vegas 103. Is that the next card we're looking at?
What is the price on Chepe?
It's probably a little too
He's
high
gonna
of a
beat
price.
Ricardo Hamos's ass, honestly.
But Hamas doesn't have a chin, man. Like,
oh my God,
Hamas
he's minus 400
Hamas
though?
doesn't have a gas tank. Yeah, minus 400 is too big.
Huge price. That's a huge price to give away as a favorite.
I haven't done my research. I haven't looked at the card
like,
yet.
I would honestly say, if you want to actually like bet something straight, Charles Johnson minus 125.
We all like Charles Johnson. I don't know Ramazan Timarov enough to say that though. Let me see here.
It's a lot of chalk. There's a lot of big chalk on that card. I have a dog that I have my eye on that I'm going to bet pretty big. He's a pretty big dog, but
I mean, if you want to spoil your own show and throw it out for our guy Chalky, thanks to the donation.
Nazrat Hackpressed. Nazrat Hackpressed is going to win and win easily. Yeah. Plus 210. That is my prediction.
I don't mind that. I don't mind that at all. I think Andrea Lee is maybe fight. Never mind. I'm not going to talk about that card. I haven't done my work. Even just starting to talk about it, I'm like, shit, I can't say that. Like, there's too many question marks. But there you go, Chalky. I do think that you're going to get a Chepe win. Line is probably blown out, and John gave you a nice dog. Let me rapid fire the rest of this recap, and then we can get into the card because we've already started way too slow for the show. Angie Hill gets her first split decision ever. My God, the woman has gone to split decision more times than anybody in UFC history and has never actually brought
It's her first win?
It's her first split. It's her first split.
Her first split win? No.
She has lost every single split decision she's gone to. So
that is crazy.
Thank goodness. Thank you, Angie. We got our hand raised on that one. And man, I got to tell you, I was very, very specific the last 2 weeks, and it's done me right, John. I said I'm not betting this person unless I get plus money. I did not bet Slava because he never hit plus money. Dodged a bullet. And I bet Angie as soon as she hit plus 100, and I got rewarded. So I'm feeling good, making good choices. That's what life's all about. Jose Delgado, I am so high on this kid. I loved that fight. I wanted to fade the ever-living crap out of Connor Matthews. He was like 2 of our parlay. Smoked Connor Matthews. I was a little bit surprised by the Andre Petrowski and Rodolfo Vieira decision. I was playing volleyball with my daughter in my father-in-law's backyard, though. That was the fight that I didn't have any action on and wasn't too worried about missing. So I only saw like the end of the 3rd round, but I saw the live line was Petrowski like plus 500 or something, and then he got his hand raised. So I got to go back and rewatch that one.
Unanimous too, right?
It was unanimous. Yeah, that's where I was a little surprised. So I was like, I didn't see the whole thing, so I'm not the best judge, but I was a little surprised. And for once, John, like my luck is starting to turn. I can feel it because I got the
feel it in the air.
Angie.
It's coming. The wind's moving.
It's coming. I live bet Nazim Sadikov. I tried to get him plus 800. I tried to throw on him. The line moves and it drops to plus 500. And I'm like, you know what? That's enough. I'll take it. Like I wanted the 8, but I won't complain. I'll take the 5. Not half a heartbeat later, he hits him with that crescent head kick that busts open Bomb Theme. And now there's a whole thing about that. I don't know if he was quitting. I don't know if there was a translation issue. Like they called the fight, but that does not happen for me, guys. I've talked to you on this show. If somebody gets a fight called for a cut, for a swollen eye, for like the last 5 I can remember, I've been on the wrong side of. I do not get those random ass stoppages. So I feel
like, and not to disrespect you, but I feel like it's like one of those things though, where like your worst beats, you always remember a lot more than your best wins. Like I remember I had a period of time where I had Connor's broken foot against Poirier, Weidman breaking his leg, and Jacare breaking his arm against Muniz in like a 4-month period. And like, I'm sure at some point I've been the beneficiary on the other side of it, but it doesn't feel like it, you know what I mean?
It's just been the last run of like the last 4 or 5 have gone against me. So like you, I'm sure before that I was catching a few bounces, but I do not remember them. And the last several have definitely not gone my way. Edmund Shabazian very expectedly KOs Budka. I wanted to live bet Budka if he survived early, but that never had legs, obviously. Youssef Zalal did exactly what we thought he was going to do. Got on his bike in round 3 in maybe the most embarrassing fashion we've seen in some time. But he got the win. You know, he did exactly what I thought he was going to do, is win 2 rounds and then stay alive. So I didn't play Zalal by decision. It was minus 150. That felt a little gross to me, but yeah, that's the result. So I feel good. Pat on the back. And then Jared Cannonier, man, this is where I'm a little frustrated because I called the Jared Cannonier upset. I called him by knockout. I called him by late KO with the round 3, 4, 5 props. But because I'm having such a bad run right now, I chose this card to tighten up a little bit. And I went, I'm not betting those crazy ass props. Cinch it up, get a win. That's all we care about. And it sucks to watch a 35-1 just kind of sail on down the river.
Did you bet Jared though?
I did not. I wanted to bet him live, and I missed the number, and then he was like a minus 450 favorite. So, like, I just completely missed the boat after fully on calling the upset on my Friday show.
Like, you know me, and you know how I love betting these steps down in competition and whatnot as underdogs. And I've gotten so burned the last like year betting like main event older dogs, like just torched on them. And so I've just been not doing it lately. Like I bet Jared against Kaio, didn't work out, but like I passed on Izzy last week. I was like, oh, good decision. And this week, like, yes,
that's the reason I passed on this one. I was like, I keep doing this shit.
I was like sitting there that morning and I was like, man, I mean, Greg's never been 5 rounds before. He's not on the same level as Kaio. Like, I should really bet Jared. I was like, nope, John, you made a rule. You're going to stick to it. You're not betting. And then, of course, when it gets home, it's just like, okay.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. I'm just thanking my lucky stars that I got a win with my other plays, because I swear to you, if I had dropped like 3 units on this card and then not had pulled the trigger on Jared, I'd have thrown my laptop. Like, there wouldn't be a show tonight. I'd be so mad because just like the week before, the same shit had happened to me where I called, what was the call? What was the one? I made a ridiculous call last card. Somebody by decision and I didn't bet it. It was Zurong by decision over Cody Steele at plus 750. So like I could have had a winning week, not this week, but the week before that. But instead I took another massive crap because I stayed off of that gut play. If it had happened 2 weeks in a row, I'd be unconsolable right now. So I'm just happy to get the win. I'm happy to get the win, and we'll move that forward here for the rest of the year. Hopefully, like we said, tides are turning, man. You're too fun to talk to.
Can I vape on the show? Is that okay?
Absolutely. Go for it. No problem.
It's nicotine, not marijuana. For all the kids at home.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. We're good. No, we're fine here. You don't have to be sober on this show. Thank you guys for tuning in. We've already got almost 400 live viewers, and we haven't even started talking about the fights yet. John is far too fun to talk to, so buckle up, guys. It could be a bumpy one. First and foremost, let's not forget what UFC Seattle has taken from us, okay? Dear Lord, the amount of fights that have been canceled, shifted, moved. This card is in shambles, you guys. So what is left, we are going to break down for your entertainment, for your knowledge, and hopefully we can help you guys make some good bets for this coming up week. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, hit the like button here, and share the show out so the algorithm knows where we're at moving forward. First fight of the night, Modestas Bukauskas. He takes on Raffael Cerqueira, I believe is how you pronounce that. I worked on that one. See, guys, I practiced this time. We can make some improvements here. John, Modestas Bukauskas is a guy that I love. I absolutely love Modestas Bukauskas. And it's not because I'm a massive fan of his. It's because I'm a complete degenerate. And he's one of the few people that I can just circle and be like, I know this guy. You know what I mean? You've got those go-to fighters that you can just count on to be your boy. And Modestas is one of mine, whether it's on or against. 31 years old. He is the new UFC version of Sam Alvey. Very low volume striker. Pretty defensively solid, manages range pretty well, decent footwork. He doesn't stand out anywhere. He doesn't have massive power, but he's got enough power. So like if you walk into that big right hand of his, he will put you down with it, but it's almost like you've got to mess something up. You've got to mess the timing up. You've got to come in at the wrong time. Like he doesn't know how to hit you with that right hand unless you kind of leave it out there on a silver platter for him. His last fight against Marcin Prachnio, I was shitting bricks going into the third round of that fight, John, because I told everybody, I was like, look, Modestas is not a good fighter, but this is the one because Pacquiao is the worst guy on the roster, and it wasn't even a bad number. So I had far too much money than I should be comfortable with on Modestas Bukauskas that night, just knowing full well eventually Pacquiao was going to charge into that right hand. And it never happened. I mean, that fight looked like we might have been 1-1 going into round 3. Thank God Pacquiao has no grappling game. Thank God he's got no submission defense. Oh my God. I almost feel bad for you. But I mean, how bad can you feel for somebody who puts their hard-earned money on Marcin Pacquiao? Let's be real. So I got bailed out there in round 3 with just an awful submission because Pacquiao had no gas and no ground game. But that's what you're dealing with Modestas Bukauskas. In the right situation, this guy can do some stuff, right? But he's got to have the right matchup. He's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage here in this spot. And he's taking on Raffael Cerqueira, who's 11-1. One of these fraudulent record type of guys. He's 34 years old, so like he's way past it at this point. 0-1 off Dana White's Contender Series. One of those why is he here type of guys. And I think the reason is because he trains with Jailton Almeida. Like, I guess that's his connection here to the UFC in some way. He got bum rushed by Ibo Aslan, someone we'll talk about a little bit later on the card. And he got KO'd in like 50 seconds. I mean, he shelled up, he covered, and Ibo just never let off the gas. So the ref had to just kind of step in and save him. Tall, long, very light on his feet, capoeira style, bouncy, likes to move in and out, front kicks, spinning stuff, flying knees, very explosive striker. He's a BJJ black belt, but he's fought a pretty low level of competition. This fight kind of feels to me like a who lands first type of situation, just because both of them can hit relatively hard. I'm not sure Cerqueira's got great durability, so that mid-level power of Modestas Bukauskas could kind of be a factor in this fight here. But man, I think this is the time where you sell high. I actually like the dog here. I like Raffael Cerqueira, and it looks like the number's moving a little bit, so I probably need to jump sooner than later. He was plus 260 before we started the show. He's down to plus 240 right this second, and I was hoping that dog number was going to keep going up, so I was just kind of sitting on my hands here. But I am ready to absolutely throw Modestas Bukauskas under the bus because he has some of the worst tall man's defense I've ever seen. He moves straight backwards, chin straight up in the air, and he's been knocked out 4 times because of it. When you've got an athleticism advantage or a speed advantage on this guy, you can connect on him, and he does not enjoy being hit. And if your name's not Marcin Pacquiao, he will not have a wrestling or grappling advantage over you. So I fully expect Raffael Cerqueira to come out here and crack this guy. Not only is he going to win, man, I think it's inside the distance. We're starting it. First fight of the night, baby. Dog of the week. We're going Link Memorial Dog of the Week, Raffael Cerqueira, and I really think he's going to finish poor Modestas Bukauskas and put him in a box. What do you make of this fight, man?
Yeah, I'm very annoyed. I obviously talked about this on our show last night, and when we went live, he was plus 305, Raffael Cerqueira, and I was very interested. I'm still moderately interested at where it is now. You said something I think is important to understand about Modestas Bukauskas right in the beginning, and it's that he doesn't excel at anything. Like he's mid volume, like pretty average volume for the division. I would even say he's got like minus power for the division. Like he hasn't hurt for like he can knock someone out, sure, but it's 205. Just about everybody that fights in the division can knock someone out, Mm-hmm. It's not like he's out there hurting guys pretty regularly. On top of which doesn't grapple offensively almost at all. He's a pretty poor defensive grappler. His cardio is fine, but he's kind of just a guy. He's like a generalist who doesn't really excel unless you're much worse than him. And that kind of guy, and who he might also be fragile, let's be honest. Like Jimmy Crute knocked this guy out stiff. We've seen him get hurt bad a number of times. Zachary Pauga hurt him multiple times in their fight. Zachary Pauga, he arguably lost to, who belongs nowhere near the UFC, if we're being honest. So, and don't get me wrong, I say all this not to say he's terrible. I think he's like an okay light heavyweight. That's what I think of Modestas Bukauskas. He's technical enough that, in a division where like technique comes at a premium, he can kind of get by against the lower level of division, but he has no real defining skills other than his kind of ability to back foot, jab, kick, counter occasionally with the right. And that's kind of, that's something I'm not really trying to bet on that unless I'm getting it as an underdog against, a pretty overhyped fighter, just because, the inherent nature of our sport is high variance, and in a big division where guys can hurt people, betting on a mid-tempo striker without much power or grappling upside is not ideal. And he's fighting against Cerqueira. Look, I think the odds are more likely than not that Raffael Cerqueira is bad. I think that's probably the case. But I think one thing we can't dispute is he is dynamic. He hits pretty hard. He's got somewhat slick jiu-jitsu. I don't think he's much of a wrestler, but he's a dangerous fighter. He got knocked out by Ibo Aslan last fight, to your point, but let's just talk about that fight real quick. If you were going to lose a fight to Ibo Aslan, and to your point, we'll talk about him in a bit, it's going to be very quickly early in round one, the vast majority of the time. That's where Ibo Aslan wins fights. For about 3 minutes, he's got hell on the feet. It's fast, and he hits really, really hard.
Yep. And
he caught Cerqueira quick. Cerqueira shelled up, and that was the end of the fight. I don't think it tells me a lot about this fight. And the funny thing is, he was pick him against Ibo Aslan. Ibo Aslan would probably pick him or a favorite against Bukauskas if they fought today. Like, I'd almost guarantee it. So
minus 140.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's like, to me, it might even be wider, honestly. I'm not even kidding. So it's like a big market overreaction to me, or overcorrection off of, it was an underwhelming performance from Cerqueira, no question. And I think there's still a lot of question marks about Cerqueira. But what we do know is, even if skill-wise he's not kind of up to snuff, he's a dangerous fighter. He hits hard. He's got slick submission grappling. And to me, against a guy like Bukauskas, yeah, I don't know. Maybe the line ends up being correct. I'm kind of fine with that, though, because in my head, I think about it, and it's like, I can imagine a world where Bukauskas, like, true price is minus 300. I can't really imagine a world where his true price is like minus 1,000, But I can equally imagine a world where the true price is like pick 'em to slight fave Cerqueira. Like, there's a wide range of potential hindsight outcomes here because we don't know much about Cerqueira, but almost all of the upside in that range is on the Cerqueira side. So with that being the dynamic, it's like, I am pretty happy to make a small bet on Cerqueira and bet on the fighter with all the upside at the price. And if I'm wrong, okay, I'll lose a small amount of money. If I'm right, I could be right big here and win a fair amount of money. So to me, it's like, I'm happy to bet on the upside on Cerqueira against a guy who I think is in a lower rung in the division, who brings not really a lot to the table for the UFC. So I'm with you. I like Cerqueira. Bit bummed about the price move, but I'm going to play it as well, probably right after we get off here.
Yeah, man, I'm going to lock it in because, I mean, like you said, bit bummed about the price move, but it's 20 cents. Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, I need plus 250. Like, no, plus 240 is fine. I'll play plus 240. Yeah, I'm 100% with you, man. Cerqueira, there's just too many questions. And how many of these Dana White's Contender Series guys do we see get smoked in their first fight and then have a better performance in their second one?
Lot.
Like, big lights, first time on the big show. And to answer my guy Dixon Sider in the chat here, he's saying that he heard Cerqueira through his last fight against Ibo. I mean, man, I try to stay out of that game. If you start,
I won't stay out of it. You want me to make a comment about it? I'll make a comment about it.
Well, I just mean as far as my handicapping and thought process goes. If I start going down, like, I've got my tinfoil cap right here, guys. I can go ahead and swap out for you. But if I start going down that rabbit hole of this guy through that fight, like that, I start messing myself up as far as just breaking down the fight and who I think has the edge and things like that. It gets in your head. So I think he got caught, man. And then just, you've got like a 2 or 3 fight deal. What's the point of taking a life-changing beating? He covered up and he took the L, John, go ahead.
Do you want to know? Do you want to know how we would know if he threw the fight? Because we had an incident like this. It's being investigated by the FBI, and the line in that fight blew out to minus 600 from a near pick'em fight in the course of an hour and a half. This line stayed pick'em all the way through post. People, I mean, you see people talking about the NFL being in the Chiefs' pocket like all year. This is what people like to do. He had a bad performance. He got hurt early and he panicked. Like, it's really, maybe he threw the fight and it was the best kept secret in world history. I doubt it. That's all I'm saying.
Dude, I'm so with you because I know so many people are like, oh, well, since the WWE merger, like, it's guys, these are not actors. Like, if it looks like they threw the fight, that's when you think about maybe they threw the fight. Like, he got cracked by an absolute massive Turkish right hand. So, like, I'm not thinking he threw this one personally. And like John said, the line move will tell half the story there for you because people don't throw the fight for nothing. Like, somebody somewhere is getting paid if you throw a fight. Otherwise, what's the point? So yeah, I think we'll get a better performance from him this time around. And frankly, back to my guy Modestas. he can't do what Ibo Aslan did. He just doesn't. He doesn't have that type of killer instinct.
He's not going to go forward.
He does not go forward. He's not going to bum rush you. And he sure as hell is not going to throw a 16-punch combo with your back up against the cage. If he cracks him like that, you might get one big right hand follow-up. You're not going to get the other 6 or 8 that came after it. Like, he'll take one stab at it and then give you space to breathe again, which is why I think Cerqueira is massively live in this spot. Anyway, we've both already said we're on the dog. Let's get to the rest of this card. Next up, we've got Nick Klein, and he takes on Mansur Abdul-Malik in a Dana White's Contender Series alumni fight. I mean, at this point, man, like, it's just Dana White's Contender Series 2.0 with some of these fights where guys are making their debut right off the Contender Series against one another. These are 2 half-decent looking prospects, though. Klein is 29 years old, 6-1. He was a Dana White's Contender Series main eventer, which I've started kind of circling a little bit, that I think those guys that they save for the end of the Dana White's Contender Series run, and then those guys that headline the Dana White's Contender Series cards, I kind of feel like they put a little bit more weight on those prospects. So, like, maybe they actually think they've got a little something here with Nick. He starts really, really fast. I mean, this guy just bum rushed his dude on Dana White's Contender Series, bowled him over, never gave him a second to settle in or get a second breath during the fight, took his back really impressively quickly, locked in a choke, tight squeeze. I mean, he's got good underhooks, strong hips, good blast double legs. But from what I've been able to tell, he's a little uncomfortable on the feet. Like, I really think this guy is purely a grappler at this point in his game, and very good wrestling with a little bit of BJJ, sprinkled in there. Not to say he can't improve, but that's all I've got to kind of go off of. The one fight where he really got extended, that's his one loss. He got finished in the 3rd round when he wasn't able to control the pace of that fight. Now he's taking on Mansur, who is 27 years old. He is 1-0 off Dana White's Contender Series, but he is an absolute units training out at MMA Masters. He made a huge splash, taking out Dusko for us all in his UFC debut, nuked the guy, and did a really good job of maintaining in that fight, man. He hurt Dusko early, and then he had the wherewithal to defend all these like takedowns, ankle attacks. Like, so he made sure he stayed safe, he stayed balanced, he stayed on top, and then he just kept pounding. Like, this guy looked like he could continue punching a heavy bag for another 8 straight minutes, which, when you see these big muscly guys, that's not always the case. So, like, I kind of liked seeing that he was able to fend off all that offense, return with his own, and wasn't like completely dead gassed at the end of it. Mansur's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage here in this fight, and this is your striker versus grappler matchup. Mansur's closing in on being a 10-1 favorite. He's up and over -900 in some places in this fight, and that's just a little crazy for me. I mean, I know there's levels to these prospects, right? There's a difference between these guys, but they're still both so fresh, so young. If Nick extends this fight, can Mansur keep up that kind of a pace deeper? I don't know if it's going to matter. I think Mansur probably clips him early, kind of like he did his last fight. But I'm just saying if. Like, it's my Dylan Budka situation all over again. I'm not putting anything with -900 into my parlays, guys. Don't do that. The last time we saw this, Peyton Talbot dropped the decision. So just don't parlay -1000s. Like, play a prop, solo it somehow, play a total, find a different way to attack it. But otherwise, just kind of avoid watch and take notes, man. I'll say Mansur for the knockout, but, let's see.
Yeah, believe it or not, Mansur Abdul-Malik, it seems like it profiles a striker versus grappler, but he actually trained, or he wrestled at Maryland for 1 year. He was quite a bad D1 college wrestler, but he did wrestle at Maryland. I am going to catch us up on time here from that intro and just say a couple things. They are making Dusko Todorovic on paper was a much more dangerous fight for Mansur Abdul-Malik. Todorovic is a veteran of 20 fights, a man who once beat Michel Pereira. He's got a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's got a pretty serious grappling background. He's a pretty decent boxer. I don't know how repeatable or predictive that performance was by Mansur, but I don't think it matters because I'd make Todorovic a large favorite against Nick Klein personally. Like, yeah, Nick Klein, to your point, maybe he can drive him into deep waters. We saw Wes Schultz on Contender Series kind of put Mansur in some compromising positions as he started to slow down. But I just look at the athleticism and strength gap here. I don't think Klein can out-wrestle Mansur. He's way slower. He's way more fragile. He's a much worse striker. The speed gap is gigantic. Yeah, if he can kind of hang in there, he can maybe drag him into deep waters and, maybe do some work if he's able to get a takedown. I'm just very skeptical he can. I don't want to say I don't think there's no such thing as a setup fight in terms of a fight being fixed, but there are setup fights where the UFC is trying to make a prospect look good.
They stack the deck.
Yep. And if you were trying, they're going to Seattle in a live crowd, and it was supposed to be a big card. You went over all the cancellations earlier. And if you're trying to make this, sick athlete prospect that you have, Mansur Abdul-Malik, who's 27 years old, look really good in front of a live crowd, well, you wouldn't give him a step up from Duska Todorovic. You'd give him someone like Nick Klein, Yeah. And to me, I know that's not much of an analysis, but my analysis is, Nick Klein's got better jiu-jitsu, but I don't really see how he gets it there. Even if he gets it there, Mansur is bigger and he's much more explosive. Like, this isn't 135 or 145 where, if you're a good back taker, you can hop on the back if they try to explode up. If you can explode up at 185, 205, you're going to get up. And Mansur can do that. I think he's got him covered everywhere. I think he should win the fight easily. Yeah, maybe Nick drags him to deep waters, and then guess what? We'll all bet it live. But I have no interest in parlaying Mansur Abdul-Malik. I have no interest in betting Nick Klein. I think Mansur probably finishes him fairly quickly.
Right there with you. Everybody catch how John said he'll catch us up on time and then rattled off for 6 minutes? No. Oh, I love it. No, I completely agree with you, man. I bet that Mansur KO prop is going to be like minus 200. Oh, my Lord. Let's go. Next fight up, Ricky Simón takes on Javid Basharat. And I have one question for you, John. And is that, do we buy low on Ricky Simón? Because, my God, this fight has just everything that you and I are a sucker for written all over it. Ricky's on a 3-fight skid. He's 32 years old, so technically speaking, still in his prime. Those losses are to Song, Mario Bautista, and Lockdog Oliveira, who apparently is prospect of the year so far. All 3 by decision. He's training at ATT. Power wrestle boxer, short, thick, relentless grappling pace, good cardio. The one knock on him, that chin. Every once in a while, Ricky Simón's chin just goes. Now, it's looked pretty good in his last couple
Very
of
good.
fights.
Very good.
I'm not so sure that Ricky didn't get a new doctor and maybe things with his durability are a little different. Now, that's the kind of thing that can always pump up and just jump scare you out of nowhere, right? All of a sudden, it just goes on a shot that does not look like it should be knocking anybody out. He might just get flatlined. But it's been a long time since I've really had to worry about Ricky Simón's durability. I thought Vinicius Oliveira was going to be the guy. I thought he would put the nail in the coffin. And Ricky did really well in that fight. Defensively, his striking looked on point. He covered and rolled with a lot of shots in that one. And it's funny because watching that fight live, I had a bet on Ricky. I actually really felt like something was wrong. I was like, maybe he's sick. Like something just didn't look right to me. And then upon rewatching it, doing my tape study here for you guys, he shot 11 takedowns. It wasn't that something was wrong with Ricky. Vinicius Oliveira just looked phenomenal. He was a brick. Like, he was a brick wall. You could not get him to the ground. Ricky couldn't get his normal game going on him. And because of that, he was forced to strike at range, which is not Ricky Simón's game. So everything kind of got flipped early. And I really felt like Ricky Simón bailed on the wrestling too early in that fight. But again, upon rewatch, he didn't bail on it early. In fact, he really tried to mix it in throughout the fight. And 11 takedown attempts is not a small number. So I kind of have a different opinion about that fight in hindsight, that he just got beat. Nothing was wrong with him. He's got an 85% takedown defense rating himself. Very tough to take down and control Ricky Simón. Usually he's the one doing that. Javid Basharat, man, he lost just a couple of months too early, right? Because 2025 so far has been the year of the L. These O takers out here knocking off all these undefeated prospects. He's coming off having his O taken by Ayman Zahabi. Tall, long, really good movement, very good cardio, good grappling, really well-rounded. Man, I went back, and that's another one where that was a really close fight. I didn't have anything on it, I don't think, when they actually fought. I think I passed on that one because there's something that makes me uncomfortable about Javid, especially his last couple of fights. The DQ, now this loss to Ayman Zahabi. Like, I almost feel like we thought this kid was a super prospect, and maybe we're finding his ceiling a little faster than we expected to. But he's got very good range control. He keeps a very high pace. Like I mentioned, the cardio is good. He's very elusive and he stays long. And I think that really could cause some problems for Ricky Simón. But I'm not entirely certain that Javid is going to be able to out-wrestle Ricky And when he can't out wrestle people, that causes problems. He also doesn't have the stinging power of somebody like a Song Yadong or a Vinicius Oliveira. And that's not going to dissuade Ricky the way those guys did. I can see this fight playing a whole lot more closely than this number suggests. Javid is going to have a 3-inch height advantage here, but they have a matching reach. Ricky is a plus 240 underdog. Javid is a minus 300 favorite. And man, the year of chalk, like the books have figured out that these favorites just need to be priced higher, and it's not stopping anybody. I'm going to say Javid by split decision. Like, I think this is going to be a really greasy, close fight, man.
All right, so if you watched my show last night, I apologize for giving a different take on the show this morning. I made sure to
ignore your notification. I usually listen, but I'm like, he's coming on the pod. We're not listening.
So I actually didn't tape this fight till this morning. I gave my thoughts on it based on what I know, which is a lot about the two of them. But I looked at it, my take was basically Javid should be fine. The price is probably fine. I taped it this morning, and I'm not sure if I'll bet Ricky. What I'll say is this. I still agree with my analysis that I think Javid stylistically has the skills to win this fight fine and handle Ricky. Like, he's a pretty good grappler. He's tall. He's long. He's a good technical striker. But what I'll say is this. Javid Basharat, he has no margins, man. Like, you watch his fights, and this is a guy, I mean, he lost to Ayman Zahabi last fight. Now, Ayman's a good fighter. That line was disrespectful, and he's a good fighter. But, go further back than that. You go to the Tony Gravely fight. He lost round 1 to Tony Gravely. I mean, even round 3 with Gravely dead gassed out wasn't on the biggest of margins. He fought Trevin Jones, who's like one of the worst ever in the division in the UFC. Like, I love Trevin. He had 2 fun KOs and then never won another fight in the UFC.
But
the guy's
I was so in on Trevin Jones, man.
He's fun, but he's not very good, And like, that fight was very, very competitive. I mean, so it's like, even the Victor Henry fight before Javid, kicked him below the waist, he was kind of getting paced by Victor Henry. Like, Javid's brother, Farid, is much better than Javid is, in my opinion. He just doesn't have, he's medium volume. He doesn't have a ton of power, and he's not like a proactive grappler. And like Ricky, I have worries about Ricky. Like, I think he looked pretty bad against Vinicius Oliveira. I thought he looked pretty bad against Mario Batista. But like, Mario Batista is a top 10 fighter. And to your point, Vinicius Oliveira might just be someone I've really, tragically underrated off his performance in that Sopaj fight in his debut. And I also think Ricky was hurt last fight. Like, you go rewatch that fight, he's never worn an ankle brace in his career. And he comes in with that. He's moving slower. His output's much lower than it's ever been. Oliveira hurts his leg, and Ricky still doesn't do anything. And this is a guy whose entire career has been built by outpacing his opponents, and he showed none of that there. So I think about it, and I'm like, man, like, Tony Gravely looked like, I don't want to say pick him, but that was a very competitive fight. And like, I trust Ricky Simon's cardio a lot more than I trust Tony Gravely's cardio.
Simón over Gravely, big time.
Yeah. And it's like, I think about it. And yeah, if they go 15, Javid's probably going to outland him by 15 to 20 strikes. He's a better striker. Is he going to hurt him? I'm kind of skeptical. And if the margins are that thin, like 2 or 3 takedowns or like 3 to 4 minutes of cage push can easily swing the entire fight. I keep thinking about, like, Ricky is a guy who was fighting like 3 fights ago. He was in a main event against Song Yadong, and he was ranked in the top 10. He loses that fight. He loses to Mario Batista, who just beat Jose Aldo, who's in the mix for like a title shot in the near future. And he loses that ugly fight to Vinicius. And now we're treating him, and the market's treating him as if he's kind of like a mid to lower tier guy. When it's like, we know he's not a mid to lower tier guy. Like, Ricky's a pretty good fighter,
People are calling him
I don't know. Yes. And I don't think, I think if anything, it's probably swinging the other way here, because Javid hasn't, even if you go to the Mateus Mendonça fight, I bet Javid at juice in that fight, and like, he won it solidly, but it wasn't like anything to really write home about. And if Mateus Mendonça,
man.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That is exactly it. And he's taking on a guy who historically in his career has been reliable to take the pace to you. So I don't know. Like, my head is like, Javid is the better and more skilled fighter who should win this fight, but also 75% seems like a lot. Like, I have a really hard, So I don't know if I want to do it, but I lean the Simón side of the number. I do.
I'll be honest with you guys. I was extremely skeptical of these spreads when they introduced them. And I was like, why would you ever bet a spread in MMA? And the number of split decisions I've been on the wrong side of, I'm like, now I will start respecting spreads. I actually think this is a perfect Ricky Simón plus 3.5 spot. Like if they give me the plus 3.5 or the plus 5.5, somewhere near evens, I expect this to be a 29-28. I know Javid is a 30-27 merchant, right? Like I know he just controls the space, but you cannot tell me that Ricky won't win one round of this fight. Like even if it's just
is he a 30-27 merchant? The dude was going to lose a round to Victor Henry. He just lost the fight to Amin Zahabi. He lost a round to Trevin Jones. He lost a round to Tony Gravely.
Yeah.
And he's minus 300. It might even be plus money on a spread, honestly.
And that's it. Just don't do me like you did Vince Morales last week, guys, because that line moved so hard that I had to put Vince plus 3.5 in a parlay because it was minus 200. I don't want to parlay Simón plus 3.5. It should be somewhere in the ballpark of even money. Maybe lay a little bit of chalk. I will enjoy that play. I'll take Simón plus 3.5. And if I lose a 29-28, I'll feel very comfortable.
I agree.
That's the move. That's the move. All right, guys, let's move along. We've got Nursulton Ruziboev taking on Eric
McConico.
How do you say that? McConico?
McConico, I believe.
McConico. All right, McConico. I missed the in the middle of there when I read it in my head. So you guys know there is no love lost between me and Nursulton Ruziboev. I hate this guy. I can't stand him. I cannot believe they signed his smaller, worse little brother. Like I wanted to hammer Jared Gordon. Gordon was going to put that man in a box last week.
Hold on. I think that says a lot that you were saying you wanted to fade Jared Gordon, given your history with Jared Gordon.
Right. Anybody who knows me knows that I've been on the Gordon is chinny train. I do everything I can to be on the other side of that guy because I just don't believe that he's all that good. And now, on top of all that, he's getting old. Like, I'm going to fade the shit out of Jared Gordon. But you signed this guy. I posted, I don't know if you saw it on Twitter, John, but I posted the video clip of him. The one time he faces a grappler, and I'm talking about the wrong fighter here. I'm talking about the worse younger brother. The one time he fights a grappler who's got like a damn near even record, he throws an overhand right at the fences and like face flops. Like he throws himself off his feet. I'm like, this guy is awful. Like, my God. So yeah, I was licking my chops to get that one, but he got sick and now he's in the UFC. We'll fade him later. It'll happen. But Nursulton Ruziboev is just about as bad. 34, 9-2 at 31 years old, massively padded record. And he's been knocked out once. He's been submitted once. He's been to decision 9 times, and he's only won 2 of them. If that tells you anything. I've told you guys before, all you need to know about this guy is he's got a right hand. He is so fast early, and he hits like an absolute truck early. If his fights get extended out of round 1, he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know what to do when the fight gets long. His opponents figure him out. They learn how to avoid that right hand, and then you're off to the races. And then he just gets picked apart for the next couple rounds, or he will end up getting finished at the UFC level. The guys on the regional scene, they can't figure out how to actually put him away. UFC guys, they will put him away. So Joaquin Buckley was just one of my favorite spots of all time, being able to fade this guy. And John, I will never stop complaining about them taking away my Cedric Dumas bet, because Dumas was on his way to doing exactly what I'm talking about. He was figuring it out. The right hand was no longer landing. It landed once, and it never landed again. But then he gets poked in the eye, and for some reason, the ref decides not to stop the fight. I was so furious about that spot because I had a massive bet on Cedric Dumas. Anyway, we've got Ruziboev coming back in this fight, and I wanted everything in my soul, just my core. Give me one thing. Give me one reason so I can fade this guy, because he's a minus 300 favorite again. And I looked into Eric, and man, I just can't find that reason. He's 34 years old. He's training at the MMA lab. Jared Cannonier really likes him, shouted him out after his last performance. And that's great. They're boys. It's a good gym. That's all good stuff. But when you run the tape, it's like, man, I couldn't find anything. He's got not a ton of experience. He's been knocked out twice already. He's got a pretty balanced record, 4 KO wins, 3 submission wins, 2 decision wins. So we know he can go 15 minutes. We know he can hit pretty decently hard. We know he can look for the finish. But then you start looking at the guys that he's fighting. And he got knocked out in round 1 by a guy that's 10-7. He's beating guys who have 0-0 and 1-0 records. He's getting, let's see here. What was the guy he beat to get into UFC? 15-10 10-4. Like, the records are awful. The guys he's fighting don't look like fighters. It's just a terrible level of competition. And so he is going to come in here into the UFC. He's got his boy Jared Cannonier making calls to get him in, and he's going to get squashed in the first round. This poor 34-year-old man, his back is going to hurt for the next 2 calendar years after he eats the right hand of Ruziboev, because that's the only thing he's got to land. But he's going to land it. It's going to be Nursulton round 1 KO, and it makes me sick to my stomach to say that.
I bet McConico.
Yeah!
I bet McConico this morning. I don't
John,
like...
tell me why. Get me on the train with you. I want to come with you.
Cade just mentioned it in the chat. Would you bet Maki Pitolo at plus 300 against Ruziboev? I would.
I would.
He beat Maki Pitolo very recently.
Okay,
like he's and you talked about his record, and you're not wrong. You know who else's record looks like that? Nursulton Ruziboev's record. He did get knocked out twice, and I'll be honest, that's my biggest point of concern in this fight. I don't think he's the most durable, but also those 2 KOs happened in, like, I think it was 2 of his first 4 fights in his career. They were like way back in the day, and I don't know, like, I'm not going to make a case to you, Clint, that like Eric McConico is good or he's coming for the top 15 or anything like that. I don't need that. I am going to make a case to you that Nursulton Ruziboev, he's big and he's fast and he hits hard. He's terrible at MMA. Yes, he is dynamic and he is large. And that's
the worst Edmund Shabazian.
Yes. Nursulton Ruziboev is the man you want to bet when he is plus 200 against like a one-dimensional grappler, where it's like he can maybe land his kill shot. You don't want to bet him when he's chalked up, because if this guy gets up on bottom, if he doesn't hit a sub like a guillotine off the bat, he's screwed. He's just flat, has nothing to do there. If he doesn't find an early KO, he runs out of gas and doesn't have much there. If you get inside of his reach, and spoiler alert, unlike most of his fights, he doesn't have a big reach edge here. He has a 1-inch reach edge. If you get inside of this guy's reach, he is there to crack. His chin is high in the air. He doesn't move his head. Now, McConico can get cracked too, but like, I actually think McConico is I don't want to say he's a good talent, because to your point, he's 34 years old. He's been around the block. He is technically a sound fighter though. And the MMA lab, you look at every one of the guys that fight out of that gym, they all have good game plans. They game plan their opponents very, very well. McConico is a decent submission grappler. They're going to know this guy can't grapple if they take him down. They're going to know he's got no takedown defense. Even on the feet, yeah, McConico can be hittable, but if he gets into the pocket with Ruziboev, he throws way straighter than he does. I don't see why. Like, would I favor Ruziboev in a brawl? Yeah, but I don't see why McConico can't knock him out in a brawl either. And that's kind of my point. It's almost like the Bukauskas fight we discussed earlier, where it's like Nursulton's minus 300 here. What is his upside to being minus 300? You're telling me he knocks him out in the first round 3 out of 4 times? Maybe. It's possible, I guess. But if I told you, oh, wait, they're going to swing and it's 60-40, or McConico grapples and looks like a favorite, would I be shocking you? Like, I don't know. It wouldn't shock me. So do I make McConico a favorite? No. I think Ruziboev, with his experience and his having the age advantage that he does and the athleticism edge, it's fine making him a favorite here. I think going past minus 200 against a guy who can be a dangerous grappler and who's got hands on the feet, in and of itself, with Ruziboev's skill set, makes no sense to me. Especially coming out of a gym like the lab, where he's been training with Jared Cannonier. He's getting good work in, and it's one of the best gyms for game planning there is in the sport. Look at all the guys who debuted out of there. The last guy debuted out of there that was a dog in his debut, Marcus McGee, plus 250, comes out there, or was it plus 200 against Journey Newson. They consistently send guys out there who optimize their paths to victory. Now, maybe it won't matter and he'll get knocked out, but I trust he's going to have a good game plan here. I think he's got a lot of grappling upside, and I think even if they swing, he's got plenty of upside on the feet. So I'm not super passionate about it, but I put a unit on McConico plus 250.
Okay. All right. Well, John, I appreciate you giving me the argument and any reason whatsoever to get involved here. I think I'm going to treat this exactly like the Edmund Shabazian and Dylan Budka fight from last week. I'm going to watch round 1. Give me 3 minutes. I want to see what this guy looks like for 3 minutes. And if he's dead after 3 minutes, I will have dodged a bullet. But if he's alive and if he can take a punch, and maybe, like the people are saying, if he can grapple a little bit, I will be just hammering the live bet button as this fight is continuing. I cannot for the life of me put my money pre-flop on discount. No, not even discount Cannonier. This man is clearance rack Cannoneer. Like I cannot go on clearance rack Cannoneer pre-flop, but I will definitely be looking live to see if I can get involved. And I'm just selfishly, I want the Ruziboev round 1 KO because that's my fade equity for next time. I don't want to miss the boat on the fade. I want the hype back. We just signed his little bro. He gets a round 1 knockout. They're both on a pay-per-view. He's the curtain jerker, and they give him somebody that can crack. And I just salivating at the opportunity to fade him against a better opponent. All right. Dream, you're talking hockey in the chat here. What are you on about with this Hellebuyck over? Is that Hellebuyck over saves, or are you just saying over in the game total? Because I didn't think Hellebuyck was playing tonight. Did they call him in? I thought they were saving him for Canada versus USA 2.
Fun fact, I have Hellebuyck to win MVP at plus 7,500.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's not bad right now. Yeah,
it's looking good. John, I am this close to playing just a little bit on like Jets futures as far as like winning the cup and everything.
Yeah, they're great.
Hellebuyck's having a season. The offense is clicking.
Yeah.
And Gabe Velarde was a beautiful addition to that team. I'm loving what the Jets are doing right now. I'm tempted because I think they're like 14 or 16 to 1 right now. I don't mind that to win the cup.
And hockey playoffs are so high variance, you know, it's probably a bit better than that, or it should be probably a bit better than that.
You need defense, and they've got the defense too. You know, you've got the goalie, you've got the defense, and that's what wins these games out more often than not. So I'm tempted,
and we're due for a Canadian Stanley Cup, you know, if we're being honest. Narrative Nation
long overdue for a Canadian Stanley Cup. My goodness. Anyway, back on track, you guys. We got 600 live viewers already. Thank you guys for being here. I'm joined by John from the Club and Sub podcast. His boy, Danny Lags, our boy, I should say, is in the chat here somewhere. I saw him a little bit earlier. Thank you also for being here, Danny. We got to get you on the pod one of these days pretty quick here soon, too. Next fight up, Ion the Hulk Cutelaba takes on Ibo Aslan. And we touched ever so briefly about Ibo Aslan a little bit earlier in the card. This monster from Turkey seems to be somebody the UFC is pretty high on. And 28 years old, all of his wins by knockout, like straight up 14 wins, 14-0 to the KO. That's what this guy does. And 90% of them are in round 1. That's this guy's calling card. As he starts fast, he hits hard, his ground and pound is filthy. So whether you lose your balance and stumble and fall over, or if he knocks you to the floor or hits a random takedown, whatever, if you get this man on top of you, you are probably not getting up after that. I own Cutelaba 18-10. It kind of skid here a little bit for my guy. 31 years old. I actually don't think he's training at Extreme Couture anymore, just based on what I was seeing with his online stuff. It looks like he's training at a smaller gym for this one, which is a little bit of a concern to me because I thought Extreme Couture would be a good spot for him to be at. And if he's moving on from there and he's just kind of doing his own thing at the UFC PI, or he's not getting freestyle MMA in Las Vegas, which I need to look into. But I like everybody over at Extreme Couture. I like that gym. I like the coaches. I like the bodies that he's working with. So a little concerning for me if he's moving on from that. But Ion is alternating wins and losses right now. He is 2-2 in his last 4, but zoom out a little bit and he's 2-4 in his last 6. So not great. He tends to be a bully, man. He's a good hammer and a bad nail. I haven't gotten to say that for a while, but that's Ion Cutelaba to a T. If Hulk is smashing on you, he's good to go. If you are smashing on Hulk, it's probably going to be over sooner than later. And the other thing, as much as I love watching this guy, I love his weigh-ins. I love the fact that he paints himself head to toe green to be the Hulk up there and just completely steers into it. He's got the body for it. It works. I have to put him in the bad fight IQ trash bin. I will never not remind you guys that he literally got TKO'd against Magomed Ankalaev because he played possum so hard, the referee thought he was out on his feet. Like, he faked being hurt, looking for a counter shot so well that the UFC official stopped the fight. That's the kind of stuff you can't really put your money on. Like, that's an extra, very creative way to lose a bet. So just be warned. That's the kind of madman that you're dealing with here in this fight. He's a very strong human being. He does just kind of bully people in the wrestling. And because we've never seen Ibo outside of round 1 very often, the only times we've seen him outside of round 1, the Anton Turkalj fights. And Anton Turkalj is the one guy that finished this dude, the Pleasure Man. Shout out Pleasure Man. He submitted him in round 2 on the regionals. Ibo got it back in the UFC, but the same damn thing was happening. The Pleasure Man was starting to get off on him later in that fight. In round 3, he comes out and just lands one Hail Mary shot. Ibo was gassed. He was tired. His mouth was hanging open. And frankly, John, I think that was a bit of an early stoppage. Like, Anton, we've seen take just piles of damage. His butt hits the floor and his eyes are wide open. He looks right up at his opponent, and the referee steps in and like tries to like save him and wave it off. That it's like, bro, he was not out. He was not done there. Like, have you watched an Anton Turkalj fight? Like, he was not done there. So little frustrating. I did have a bet on Anton that night, so I felt a little robbed because you know the late fight heroics are coming. If Ion can extend this fight, I love that for him. Usually that's something I hate for him because he's not the most reliable gas tank. But back in the day, he did go a full 15 minutes with a guy like Devin Clark, who's a decently strong wrestler. He just did this with Ivan Aslan, who, not to be confused with Ibo Aslan, is actually a different human being. But he won a decision in that fight, doing kind of the same thing. If this turns into a full mixed martial arts fight, I think Ibo can be broken by Ion Cutelaba. But it's a close line. And I'm really trying now, John, this year, because I told myself I wasn't going to do it, and then I did it. I'm going back to not doing it. I'm not going to get into these silly coin flippy fights. If there's not a big enough edge where I legitimately think I've got some kind of value or a really solid read on it, I'm just not going to get involved. Ibo Aslan is a minus 175 favorite right now. You can get Ion Cutelaba plus 145. This feels like the UFC is setting up a changing of the guard, get a big name on Ibo's resume type of spot. But from a betting perspective, it feels so dog or pass to me. I like fading people when they get that test. I like fading people when they get that step up, especially if they've got sketchy cardio. Ion's just a guy I need a little better than plus 145 to trust. So I'll pick Ibo to get the win here, but like zero confidence in this pick whatsoever, man. I'm picking a side for the sake of the show. I will not have my money on this fight.
Yeah, so you mentioned that Turkalj was starting to land on Ibo later in that fight, but he actually won the first round of that fight on the feet. He was landing on him all fight. I'll be honest with you. He's fast and he hits hard. I don't think he's very good. Obviously, he's powerful and he can put anybody out, and he's aggressive early in fights. But man, when you sit down in the pocket with this guy, his head, there's no head movement at all, and his chin is straight up in the air. Turkalj is a bad striker, like a flat out bad striker, and he was outstriking Ibo over the course of that fight. I bet him live in that fight because I thought the fight was swinging hard in his direction before he got knocked out. And I went into tape here thinking, I was almost certainly going to bet Ibo because I'm not really an Ion guy, but I don't know. Like, I look at this fight, and in my head, I'm like trying to picture playing out. Is Ibo a better striker than Ion? I'm really not sure that he is.
I don't know that he is.
That's what I'm saying. And if they swing in the pocket, I mean, Ibo's got power. He can knock him out. But Ion's got a lot of power too. The only two guys to knock Ion Cutelaba out are Magomed Ankalaev and Kennedy Nzechukwu. And the Nzechukwu one started with a vicious knee to the body. He's not going to have to worry about that here, I feel like Ion can hold his own fine on the feet. And, like, if they both start to slow, well, one of them actually has pretty good wrestling in his back pocket. He's not Anton Turkalj. He's a lot better at it than Anton Turkalj is, and that's Ion Cutelaba. He's also the much more experienced fighter here. He's been fighting in the aggregate a much, much higher level of competition. I look at his last fight, and it had sketchy moments against, what's his name? The KSW guy. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but I thought that dude was better than Ibo Aslan is, to be honest. Better boxer and certainly a better grappler, much straighter shots. Like, Ibo, everything he throws, they're all wide looping hooks. He's quick, so it works. But unlike that, Ion is very straight to the target. He throws, he actually is a decent boxer. I mean, he knocked out Tanner Boser not too long ago. Yeah, I like Ion here. I think he should be a small favorite personally. I'm going to eventually bet him, but like, Ibo's getting steamed like crazy. I just feel like, yeah, he could get knocked out. I just don't see why, if they swing, Ion isn't at least as likely to hurt Ibo on the feet, given that he is the more defensively responsible fighter and throws straight to the target. And if someone's going to have big grappling success, we both know who it's going to be in this fight. So, You want to give me the more experienced guy with that dynamic as an underdog? Like, I'll take it. I like Ian a fair amount here. It's probably my favorite spot on the card, honestly.
Wow. All right, there you go.
Yeah.
I'm a little too nervous to get involved with Ione at this point, but I love the attitude. I love the fact that you're trusting your balls going into this one, making a big play on a very volatile fight and the most volatile sport in the history of mankind to bet on.
But wouldn't you want to, like, if you're going to bet on a volatile fight, don't you want to bet on the plus 150 who also is the only guy with grappling upside? You know, yeah. It's.
As I always say, man, if you project a fight to go to a split decision, you want the plus side. Like, flip that coin with plus money. I'm with you. Steer on into it, man. I just, I'm coming. I'm coming off my what should have been a 2-week winning streak, but instead it's my first win in a couple of weeks. So I need to stack up some wins here. I'm doing my very best to keep it tight for this card. What always happens to me, John, I get one win under my belt and I go, you know what? Everything I projected last week went perfect. If I had not tightened up last week, I could be a millionaire this week. I could have just thrown darts at everything. Every noodle would have stuck to the wall and I would have won all of it. So then I get a little overexcited for that next card and I start just kind of firing a little bit of everything out there. And then I get my ass whooped because it doesn't go as well the second week in a row. So this week I'm going to stay with being a little bit tighter because it's an extremely volatile card. And I want a 2-fight win streak, John. I need me to bag a 2-fight
Dude, it's going to happen. But you know what you got to avoid? And I do the same thing. And I've been trying to avoid it more. It's the late in the week bets, man. Because, like, I tape all these cards, like, all these fights, like, the week before generally. And then it's like I'll find myself making, like, 3 to 5 bets on, like, Friday and Saturday. And it's like, those never go well. Like, if I didn't have conviction when I was taping it early, why am I, like, suddenly changing my mind? It's like I need to just go into, like, a bunker on, like, Sunday night and not come out of it until Saturday, you know?
Dude, you know what it is for me? It's the keeping up with the Joneses. I watched Narco hit a 40, 50 to 1 that he calls on his show every other week. And I'm like, fuck, dude. Like, I had Jared Cannonier round 3, 4, 5 by KO this week. Did I pull the trigger on it? No. Like, I've got the big time FOMO of like, why didn't I just sprinkle? And so then I do sprinkle and then I miss. So it's that never ending carousel.
These are the cards we live for. This is a COVID era card. It is dog shit. This is what we live for.
We're having throwback COVID cards this week. That's exactly what this is with all the cancellations. Gosh, they're getting somebody to, someone from Vegas is going to fill in on 24 hours notice or some shit on this card.
Well, it's in Seattle. Like, if this was in Vegas, it would probably only be 8 or 9 fights. But because it's in a live audience, they've got to make sure they fill it up.
Yep. They got to fly somebody out there. Oh, God. All right, guys. Next fight up, we've got Andre Fili takes on Melquizael Costa. One of the few pick'em lines here on this card. And, man, I kind of get why. Like, Andre Fili, we've talked about him for years. He has these flashes of brilliance. Like, when Fili is on, he looks like a world beater. He looks like a guy who could challenge for a belt. And then he just kind of falls apart, or sometimes he just gets his ass whooped. It's crazy how you've got this like ceiling and floor dynamic with Andre Fili. 34 years old, 3-3 in his last 6 fights, which exactly kind of tells you what we're dealing with here. He starts really strong, man. In his last couple of fights, I've actually mentioned this and we've bet on him a couple of times recently because of how strong he has gotten started recently. He almost knocked out Nathaniel Wood. I bet on him by KO that night because I'm like, man, Nathaniel Wood is not that durable. He recovers well, but he gets hurt in every fight, and he starts a little slow. I'm like, if Fili head kicks this guy in round 1, he could put him out. Sure enough, he does it, wobbles Nathaniel Wood, doesn't follow up, doesn't get the finish, ends up losing a decision. So, like, that's just the story of Fili. If you can survive this guy in round 1, you can pull a Cub Swanson on him, and you can just kind of pick and poke at him and make it close enough that the judges see it your way over the course of the fight. He goes to split decision far too often for what is healthy, man. He has 3 of his last 4 wins that have come by split decision. You heard that right. So of his entire run that he's on right now, 3 of his last 4 wins, this is dating back to Charles Jourdain in 2020. 3 of those wins are by split. And then he's got the 1 knockout over Lucas Almeida. This person, Andre Fili, is Mangela Hill. He goes to split decision, except he wins them. Whereas Angie gets robbed by the judges. He will have a 3-inch reach advantage in this spot. 70% takedown defense rating. Melquizael Costa, 21-7, 28 years old. He's a really good grappler. He's got good scrambles, good bottom game. The problem is he usually ends up being on bottom. And that's I have such a hard time with bottom game grapplers sometimes because they'll lose minutes because they're so comfortable just playing from bottom. But he has good abilities to scramble. He likes to attack legs. He sweeps. So he's not the guy that will just sit there and play guard. He will use that guard to actively get on top or find a dominant position. Doesn't have the best cardio, but for some reason looked like he had incredible cardio in his last fight. I really thought that Shayilan Nursulton was going to just maul this guy. And then all of a sudden in round 3, he's not even breathing hard. And they were scrambling all fight, like switching positions, up, down, takedowns, down, roll, ankle. And in round 3, he's just like staring daggers at Shayilan that was like, bro, why ain't your mouth open? Like, where's the breath coming from? How are you not tired right now? I think Melquizael Costa figured something out between his last couple of fights. Now, Shayilan Nursulton, not the best fighter in the world, obviously, but what he is a really good wrestler. So to be able to hang with him for 15 and then have the energy to take his back and choke him out, that was extremely impressive to me. I kind of like Melquizael Costa in this fight just a little bit because if they fight on the feet the way we've seen Fili fight on the feet recently, he can steal the fight away. It can be close. It can be a greasy decision. And then if they hit the ground, I kind of feel like Melky is the cleaner grappler. I know Touchy Feely's probably the better wrestler of the two. He does train out there with Uriah's gym. He's been with Faber basically forever. So he's a good enough wrestler, but it's not something he usually relies on or goes to. And I could see him getting reversed. He's got a couple grappling fights where he's been finished in a couple of those. Like, I just think the submission edge for Costa is something that probably tips the scales in his favor. It's a close fight, man. We're talking flipping a coin. I'm not flipping the coin. Costa was plus 100 earlier in the week. He's minus 115 now. I kind of agree with the move. I think it's a split decision type of fight. So I'm going to go ahead and say Costa, but I'm probably going to steer clear of this one too.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. Did you hear me chatting with my wife? I had her drop off a glass of red wine. I didn't realize it was not on mute. So
yeah, we got about half a second of audio. You're good.
I told her to get out of my office because she started talking to me. Not the most polite, but yeah, I don't know. It's kind of, I've really waffled on this fight a lot. And to your point earlier, I feel like it's not that Fili finds a way to fall apart so much as he's been the same fighter for 10 years now. Like Andre Fili at 24 when he was in the UFC is at 34 the exact same fighter. He's made almost no improvements. Good boxer, decent wrestler. If he's got a submission grappling edge, he's got it. Mel Costa, I don't know what to make of this guy. I'll be honest, because on the one hand, there's a part of me that wanted to like him here because I think he plays the outside fighting game a bit better than Fili. Volume's a bit more reliable. He can kind of do that kick and move game, and hard to keep up with. But at the same time, the guys he's implemented to that against are Austin Lingo. That's basically it, really. I feel like he's not going to out grapple Andre Fili. I'm pretty confident about that. I feel like Fili is a better wrestler, and Fili can scramble, man. Like Bryce Mitchell had a hard time controlling Andre Fili. Like I do not think Mel Costa. If anything, I think Fili is the more likely of the two to get top time, but it's not really his. It's never really his prerogative these days. It's to use his wrestling. So I think they're going to strike. My big concern with the fight is that Fili just won't be able to cut him off and is just going to get volumed on the outside, which I think could happen. I think it's got a pretty high likelihood of happening. But having said that, I think he's the better boxer. And I think if he can cut him off and dictate pocket exchanges, the guys who have given Fili trouble the last few years are the powerhouses, like guys like Dan Ige, where it's like, because Fili likes to sit down and brawl with you, but if you hit hard, he doesn't really take the shots the best. So you can put him down. But against a guy like Costa, who's not really much of a power threat, that's the kind of guy Fili can let his hands go against. And those are the kind of guys where he usually looks really good when he's fighting them. And I do think of the two, Fili is a lot more likely to knock him out or hurt him. It kind of reminds me to a degree of Fili's fight with Bill Algeo, where, it was a very close fight. He won the fight, but you know, the big difference in round 1 was Fili's power kind of swung the round, and then he got a back take in round 3. I'm not saying that's what will happen here. I think it's a very competitive fight. I think it's appropriately lined close. But I do think Fili's got a bit more upside. I mean, the guy is just, he's got a wealth of experience in his career. He's fought a ton of elite fighters. Costa, he beat Shaylin. And I'm with you, Clint. Like, it was an him rocking up for that round 3 was extremely impressive. But dude, Shaylin's a bum, man. If we're being honest. So is Austin Lingo. Like this is not, that's not like, Fili coming out in a 1-1 fight against Bill Algeo and being like, okay, the striking swinging on me, I need to take him down and get his back, is very different from Costa outlasting Shaylin. The two good fighters Melky's fought, he's gotten finished by. And I just can't get that out of my head. Am I going to bet Fili? I don't know. I might not, but like people were saying it's pick him in the chat. Fili actually just flipped dog. He's plus 103 now on Bet Online. If he gets out to like the plus 120, plus 125 range, I think I probably would bet him just because I see the upside for Costa here, but I feel like Costa is relying on thin margins to win this fight, whereas Fili could actually have moments, and I have a hard time seeing Costa have moments. So I don't know. I lean to the Fili side. It's not passionate. I wouldn't bet it unless it blew out a bit more, but I lean Fili.
Okay. Yeah, man, I'm kind of there with you. I understand the thought process. Costa's moment would be a finish, right? Like if he's having a big moment, it's probably the end of the fight.
But is that going to happen? Like, I don't really think so, man. Like I do kind of think, what I think is actually interesting in this fight. Let me just pull it up real quick and see if it's still where it was.
Now, the over like 2.5 guy Max Holloway ever submitted.
Yeah, it is true. But the over 2.5 is minus 210, and the goes the distance is minus 190, and I don't think either of those are bad. I actually rate the finishing equity in this fight fairly low. Like, I do give Fili more finishing equity, but I don't think either is likely at all to finish this fight, personally.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I do just want to, real quick, though, man, I want to run through this real quick, because that comment I just made about Max Holloway kind of just opened up Pandora's box for me. When was the last time he ever really fought a grappler? Like, Cub Swanson ain't grappling these days.
I mean, he out-grappled. He out-grappled Dennis Bermudez, who's a better grappler than Costa, in my opinion.
Yeah,
and like prime Dennis Bermudez. It's a long time ago. It was a long time ago. Bill Algeo is a black belt, though.
Yeah, but Bill didn't. Did they even grapple in that fight? I felt like that was like all fist and fury and stand up in that fight.
Round
I didn't
3,
go back that far.
Fili out-grappled him in round 3. It's how he won the fight. He got a body triangle in on him.
Okay, fair enough.
And I mean, you go even past that, Daniel Pineda. He absolutely whooped Daniel Pineda until he quit.
He whooped Daniel Pineda's ass.
Yeah, that's it is not. I'm telling you, it is not easy to grapple Andre Fili. The last guy to out-grapple Andre Fili.
I'm not saying
it's
easy.
Yeah, it is. He is one of like the OG alpha male guys from when they actually were a good wrestling gym. Everybody keeps talking about them being a good wrestling gym, but it's been quite a while since that's actually been the case.
Yeah. No, I just that's crazy though, man. Like I just feel like he hasn't fought a whole lot of grapplers lately. And the Hail Mary Aljo back take body triangle to secure a round, I'm like, Melky might be the guy that doesn't work on. You know what I mean? So
it could be.
I don't know.
I'm not passionate about it. I am not passionate. Yeah,
exactly. I'm not passionate about it. All right, guys. Real quick here. We got to shout out the sponsors. We've got Spectation Sports, you guys. If you haven't signed up for Spectation, you really need to get on the train here. Promo code DieHard will get you 20% off of your subscription. They are taking over, you guys. Bigger and better than the UFC's Fight Pass, which is half broken anyway. If you guys are studying for Dana White's Contender Series, lots of different shows, lots of up-and-coming prospects. Austin Bashi, the last big one that I can really think of. All of those fights, being able to watch their regional shows and stuff like that, they're going to be on here. So it's an excellent tool for MMA gamblers. And if you just want to watch more fights, you need to be signed up for Spectation. AFP is a brand new organization. They have a show on February 22nd coming up this weekend. They've got Aries. They've got the Cage Titans, which is probably their flagship, which is really awesome. They've got some former UFC guys that fight in Cage Titans pretty regularly. So it's a good show. there's always something on, and this is where you'll find that extra little sprinkle of MMA in your life. Promo code DIEHARD, link in the description below. Fight numbers is the next thing I want to talk to you guys about. We do support the fight numbers guys over here. Our boy John Kelly operates. They have the best odds board in the business. They're taking feedback from people to improve the product. This week, turned a grand total of $26 into $42 playing DraftKings DFS because I am fishing a barrel when it comes to DFS, but I'm actually turning a little bit of a profit, John. It is so much more fun playing DFS when you can break even or win a little thanks to the tools, the projections, the numbers, the trends, all that good stuff here using fight numbers. So again, use the link in the description below if you guys want to check out their product. It's a good one. And last but certainly not least, our main sponsor here, Bet Openly, peer-to-peer betting. The winner pays 1% juice. So it's going to be better price tags for you, anybody, and everybody that plays anything on this platform. You're going to get a better number on absolutely everything you want to put your money on. And they've got every sport under the sun, lacrosse, esports, all of it. But if we're looking at fights, for example, Ibo Aslan and Ion Cutelaba is a perfect example here. Minus 165 for Ibo, plus 165 for Ion. You're getting matching numbers, and like I said, the winner pays 1% juice. So you're going to be saving money very quickly, long-term, using this platform. And something people do not seem to realize, you get all excited when you sign up for a book, you get that deposit bonus. They match your $500 on your first deposit, and that sounds sexy. You don't get that when you sign up with Bet Openly. But if you keep playing, which we all know we're all going to keep playing, over the course of time, this saving of the 1% juice, rather than laying minus 200, you're getting minus 165 instead. That's going to save you over time and be far more profitable for you. It's going to save a much larger chunk of your bankroll. So make sure you get signed up. And on top of that, guys, I do regular giveaways. My relationship with Bet Openly has allowed me to give away thousands of real US American dollars. So please get signed up because I do a lot of cool stuff like that every single week in cooperation with this platform. Back to the show, you guys. I'm joined by my guy, John Stargaryen from the Club and Sub podcast. This is UFC Seattle, and the fight I've maybe been most excited about talking to you about is up next. We've got Alonzo Menifield taking on UFC newcomer Julius the Juicebox Walker. Now, just right off the back, Julius has got one of my personal favorites fight names in a long time. The Juicebox is fantastic. I am very much looking forward to this guy, and I hope he has a long UFC career with a fight name like that. You guys know me. I like a little bit of fun. Julius Walker, somebody you probably don't know, 6-0, undefeated, 25 years old, making his UFC debut here. And you're like, man, I didn't see this guy on Contender Series, and that's because no, you didn't. He's one of the rare few who's not making a 2-day notice debut or coming off Dana White's Contender Series. They straight up just signed this kid, and that's got me raising my eyebrow just a little bit, because it's like, like an old school prospect signing. We just don't see that often anymore. 8-2 amateur career. Both of those losses coming by way of decision. One of those went to a split. So just so you know, he's got a little more experience under his belt than that 6-0 would suggest, which is something, John, that I really like when I'm looking at a prospect. Because if they've got no amateur record, or they've got 2 amateur round 1 knockouts and then they go pro and they've got 5 fights, that's just not a lot of cage time. This guy's got some cage time at 25 years old. That makes me feel a little bit better about him. He is very physically strong. He's got very good use of underhooks. He tries to drag you to the cage and just kind of cheese grate you along that thing. He's got beautiful step-in elbows when he changes ranges. Does that very, very cleanly and hits very hard. He's got filthy, thunderous ground and pound when he gets on top of people. He knows to sink his hooks in. I've lost a couple bets recently by people who just have never gone to jiu-jitsu class and don't know what hooks are when they take people's backs. So this guy does not have that problem. He does have a notable win. He's got a big round 1 finish over Bevon Lewis. If you guys remember that name, he was a guy who made it to the UFC, and people actually thought Bevon was going to be a little something. He flared out, but it's at least a notable name and a decent caliber guy that he beat on the regionals before getting signed. Very strong submission defense. Walker's found himself in trouble a couple different times, which may be a red flag. But at 25 years old, frankly, I've enjoyed seeing that he's been tested and knew how to defend and survived those positions. Like most of these guys, we see them get to the UFC, and it's the first time they've ever been put in any kind of danger that crumble. This guy has been in danger, survived it, kept a cool head, gotten out of it. He really likes Kimuras. I actually love what he does because he attacks Kimuras, and even if he doesn't get the submission, he uses them to get out of bad spots. He uses them to sweep, to reverse, to find his way on top of opponents, and it's a really good way with these big bodies that you're facing to move somebody, because you're not going to outmuscle somebody enough to tap them with a Kimura usually, especially in this case where you're fighting a guy like Alonzo Menifield who's got arms that look like you crammed a couple of watermelons in them. But what it will do is there's a certain limit to his flexibility with all that muscle, and you'll be able to roll somebody. That's a very good thing to have in the back of your pocket. It's a technique I really enjoy and like, and I want to make sure we remember for Mr. Walker, because we're talking about hitting those heel hook props at 50-1. Maybe not this week, John. But the Kimura prop, usually it's around the 25 or 30-1. We're going to hit one of those very soon with Julius Walker. So make sure you guys remember that. He challenged for the Synergy FC title. He fought a guy named Bartling, and he was on defense basically the entire first round. Like he just had to kind of work his way around the cage and survive because the guy came at him, balls of fury, everything he had, got taken down, got his back taken, lost a couple scrambles, and he just stayed calm. Found his openings at the end of the round, started having success. Round 2 comes out, smashes the guy, just completely turns it on him. I like the cardio. I like the IQ. I like the ability to go through hell and be able to come out the other side of it. So I have my eye on Julius Walker as a prospect. Now, Alonzo Menifield, 15-5-1, 37 years old. He is 2-2-1 in his last 5. He is, oh my God, they call him atomic. Like, this guy will melt a urinal when he pees. Like, he's got every single juice running through his veins. He is old and he is short, but my Lord, does this guy hit like an absolute truck. He's made massive improvements. You know, I don't want to talk about the Jimmy Crute fights, but I kind of have to. I bet Jim Crute for an unhealthy amount of money twice and lost one of those. Thank God I got the draw on one of them at least. But Jimmy Crute getting submitted by this man was never something that was even close to on my radar. So the fact that he's made improvements in the grappling is something that you can applaud Alonzo Menifield for at 36, 37 years old at this stage of his career. But frankly, they finally give him a step up in competition. He goes 0-2 by massive KOs to Olberg and Mirzakhanov. I've been talking about how Menifield was flying a little too close to the sun for a long time. Like, I just do not feel like he's very good. You go back over his record, and again, in hindsight, it just doesn't age very well, man. Fabio Charant, Ed Herman, when he was ready to hang it up, this guy lost to William Knight. Like, you don't lose to William Knight and then hang around the UFC. You just don't. He got a win, a big KO over Askar Mozarov, the fraudiest fraud that ever frauded and somehow made it to the UFC. And then he was supposed to fight Jimmy Crute, who was supposed to make an example of him. This guy was supposed to be a springboard for Crute, but instead Crute decided to fold and retire. So I just feel like he had this inflated record moving up to his last couple fights. And frankly, John, I don't know how he got the win over Dustin Jacoby. I scored that for Dustin, and I even checked MMA decisions, and a lot of media members scored it for Alonzo Menifield. So I'm just sitting here like, what the hell was everyone watching? Like, I saw a different fight that night from literally the entire world, because I thought that Dustin Jacoby got robbed that night, and I am alone in that thought process. So maybe I'm just missing something.
He almost finished Jacoby twice in that fight, which is why he won. He's on the team.
I mean, he hurt him. He did. But man, watching the fight, though, is like literally one moment swung 2 rounds. And those are the kind of things that I hate. That it's like you land one punch and you're like, you win that whole round, buddy. Like, he got his ass whooped the rest of the fight. That drives me bonkers.
You're not wrong. I mean, the volume was just not enough to outweigh it, I guess. And that's been, unfortunately, it's happened to Jacoby a few times.
Yes, it has. And so he's one of these guys that I've had like a framework of a good read on, but the results just aren't quite there because he keeps finding ways to win when he shouldn't. You know what I mean? I want to bet against him. I know you talked about liking him this week, but the further this thing gets out, the more I want to take the dog shot against him, man. Alonzo Menifield is up and over -200, and I'll say it again. I say it every time I break his fights down. Alonzo Menifield should never be -200 against anybody. Fucking anybody in the UFC. He should never be -200. So the fact that Julius Walker is +170 has my attention. I hope this line keeps moving. I want this number to go higher because I will absolutely pull the trigger on him, especially if I get anywhere near the +200 mark. +170 might be enough to get me involved, man. I think this guy can do exactly what I thought Jim Crute was going to do. Jim Crute, in the first fight, the draw fight, it landed like 6 takedowns on Alonzo Menifield, and then does what Jim Crute does, which is tire out, gas completely, and lose the rest of the fight, right? This guy can do that, and he's shown me he's not going to death gas 7 minutes in. I think Julius Walker can continue the grappling. I think he can outlast Alonzo Menifield. When Alonzo finally slows down, I think then Walker can take over. And frankly, guys, I will be eyeballing the round 2, round 3 props on this kid. Like, I think he can get Menifield out of there once he's tired. So I like the dog, man. I really am interested in Walker this week. I know you lean Menifield, so I can't wait to hear your thoughts on this fight.
Yeah, my apologies for cutting you off earlier.
No, you're fine, dude. Oh, John, can I just tell you something real quick? Let me tangent here for 2 seconds. These podcasts are so much more fun when people cut each other off. Like when there's like a natural banter, when there's a little bit of a back and forth, it is so much more damn entertaining. And I wish more of my guests would do it, because I love the respect. I love that they're like, I'm gonna let you finish. And that's great. But the you go, I go, you go, I go. Like, there's a reason JRPG stopped using turn-based combat, man. Like, it after a while, it just gets old. So like, when you've got something to say, jump in. I love it. It's fun.
All right, awesome. So I've had a very weird history with Alonzo Menifield, because this is going all the way back to like when we first started the show, like 5 years ago during COVID, something like that.
Good old days.
I'll never forget. He was fighting Devin Clark, and me and Legs got in a big argument on stream because he's like, oh, he's gonna whoop Clark, and I was like, you're taking Alonzo Menifield at like minus 250 against Devin Clark? Like, what does it matter with you? Like, Devin Clark is a level above this guy. It's funny because in retrospect, I don't actually agree with that. But back then, I bet Devin Clark, and it worked out great. I have come to have a grudging respect for Menifield. I have a lot of the same opinions of him that you do, in that I feel like, especially in the early part of his career, people looked at him, they looked at the physique, they looked at the speed, the athleticism, they're like, oh, this guy's amazing. And it's like, there's not that much behind the physique there. But, you know, as he's gotten on, I think the market's kind of, after he's took a couple L's, has kind of underrated him a bit. Like, the guy is he's a quality striker, but not a great striker. You know, he throws good straight shots. He's powerful. He's not super easy to hit. Obviously, he's a great athlete. He's also a solid grappler. He's got very good takedown defense. He's actually shown a decently competent submission game himself when he gets on top of people. And, you know, Julius Walker, so it's funny because, like, there are aspects of Julius Walker's game that I like, to your point. You know, anytime you get a 205er who's going to grapple proactively, that's great. That is exactly what you want to see, because not many guys, I mean, look at this division. How many guys can wrestle? Not many of them. You know, there just aren't many of them at all. My issue with Walker is I think his stand-up is very sketchy. You know, from the little bit of tape I've seen of him striking, it looks very, very suspect to me. What really concerns me is, you brought up the Niall Bartling fight, but what concerns me about that fight is Niall Bartling is kind of a schlubby, you know, unathletic regional guy who just got decent jiu-jitsu, and who was not just like getting the positions, but took him down 3 times, no problem. And I'm watching this fight and I'm like, Alonzo Menifield, it's like a way better grappler than Niall Bartling is. Like, if Niall Bartling is doing this to him, I really cannot imagine Julius Walker out-grappling Alonzo Menifield. So then it's like a question of cardio. It's like, does this guy have the cardio to push that kind of pace for 15 minutes? It's like, maybe he does, but like in my head, when I think about 205ers who can push a grappling heavy pace for 15 minutes, how many of them have we had? DC? John Jones? Magomed Ankalaev? It's like the best in the world. There's not many other than that who have that kind of, you know, grappling pace. So it's like, maybe he is different, but we have a lot of data that says 205ers inherently cannot push that kind of a pace, which means either he's going to have to get to a dominant position like he has against all these regional guys and finish him early, or he's going to have to hold his own on the feet. I can't really see him holding his own on the feet. I think early, while Alonzo is fresh, he's just going to be the better grappler, in my opinion. Like, maybe he gets taken down a couple times, but I can't see him getting held down. I can't see him being clinched up too easily.
You can't see, and so it's like clinched up and walked back to the fence.
A bit, yeah, but a bit, but I can't imagine like dude, Jimmy Crute is. I mean, he's got a good doctor in Australia. You look at that guy; he is, you know, totally rocked up. Like, oh, the guy's got muscles on his muscles. I just have a hard time picturing it, and Yeah, so it's like maybe this guy can cardio pump him, and like that's possible. Like I could imagine it, but there's just not many guys in the history of the division who are like that. Couple that with the fact it's very short notice for Julius. He was booked to fight at heavyweight, believe it or not, in a lower tier promotion, like in the next couple weeks. And so now he's moving all the way down to light heavyweight to fight Alonzo. And I just feel, I mean, it's a giant jump in competition for Julius Walker. It's a giant step down for Alonzo Menifield. I don't see any places where I see a very obviously exploitable hole for Walker's game to really capitalize on. The biggest concern I have, and it's the biggest credit to Walker, in my opinion, in this fight, is Alonzo's 37 years old. He's coming off 2 brutal beatings. Obviously, got knocked out stiff against Carlos Ulberg, and the Murzakanov fight was pretty ugly as well. And Julius is 25. Like, I'd expect this kid to be getting better every fight. And I do like his process. So I don't want to discount it and say he has no shot. I think that this is not not Murzakanov. Who's the Mozarov? This is not Askar Mozarov. I'm going to do that way. Like I don't think he's that, but I do think he is going from fighting in a very small, fighting small fish in a small lake to fighting a big fish in the big ocean. And yeah, I think. I mean, look, I would not advocate anybody to bet minus 220 Alonzo Menifield. I took some of the early minus 170 on him. But I do think Alonzo's the much better fighter here. I just think it's a way too much too soon for Julius. But I do understand the perspective. It's just for me, I look at it and I don't know. I can't picture in my head Walker doing what Crute did to him, on the back end of that fight.
See, and it's funny because I don't picture that at all. Like I picture round 1 being hairy. I picture a lot of clinching. I picture a lot of cage fighting and him maybe having a couple scary moments and even getting taken down. You know what I mean? But then I picture round 2 starting and Alonzo backing up. I picture round 2 starting and all that blood filling up in Alonzo's arms. Now he's getting pushed on his back. Like now he's getting taken down. Like that's the thing. I feel like he can do what Jim Crute did, just do it the right way, which is over the course of 15.
Wouldn't you make the argument, and you kind of did though, that like potentially round 2, round 3, and or couple it with trying to go live on Walker might make more sense than taking him like plus 180 pre-fight though?
Yeah, so I've done that with a couple of fights recently, and this is where, when it comes to live betting and stuff, you really got to pick your spots. Last week was beautiful for live betting.
Well, fuck me. Sorry. I was not watching it.
You could, in theory, take that approach here on this fight. But I guess for me, the thing is, we've got Alonzo Menifield, who, like you mentioned, is 37 years old, coming off of back-to-back thunderous KO losses.
Yeah.
Where's his head? What kind of state is he in?
And not training at Fortis anymore, to give more credence to that.
Not training at Fortis anymore. How many fighters have we seen hang it up recently, man? Like they're dropping like flies. Joe Selecki retired today. Like we've got people announcing their retirements left and right. So is this the one last payday on your way out the door? I don't want to be waiting for a live bet that never comes because Alonzo is ready to pack it in and this kid comes out, puts him on his ass in round 1 and pounds him out. Like I think this could be the fight where, in theory, if we're getting 100% all in Alonzo Menifield, then yeah, you probably want to live bet it because he probably has a competitive round 1. But
that's a fair point.
Might not be a competitive round 1. We might have a broken Alonzo Menifield, and this kid just rolls him.
That's a fair point. I mean, you are looking at the dynamic of we should be expecting Walker improvements and probably Menifield regression at this point as well. So yeah, I get where you're coming from. I guess I just rate kind of what Menifield's done at this point in his career a lot higher than what Julius Walker has.
Okay. No, that's fair. That is fair enough. And it really is just me kind of taking a shot on a prospect.
For sure. I get it.
You know what I mean?
Totally get it. I disagree with
fighter
you,
that I think is scraping the bottom of the barrel as far as UFC talent goes in this division. Who else are they supposed to give him? Like if this is a guy that they like coming in, all the guys on Alonzo's resume have been cut. Mozarov's not here. You can't give him Dustin Jacoby. Jim Crute just fought. Misha Serkinov's retired.
You could have given him
gone. Fabio Bukauskas gone. Yeah, they could have given him Modestas. That would have been a beautiful fight. That would have been the perfect fight. This kid rolls up Modestas, no problem. I would have loved that. You know what? And just in honor of our guy Chalky Betts here with the big dono earlier in the week, Chalky, usually we don't do this, but for you, we'll make the exception. Early lean on JDM or Leon.
I really like Leon pre-tape.
Bro. It's JDM season. What are you doing?
Dude, I laid minus 200 on Leon against the champ. I gotta bet him as a dog against JDM.
John, I gotta tell you, there's times in life where we realize that sometimes we make mistakes, man. And it's okay. And it's okay when we make mistakes. But you got to just let it go. You don't have to make a second mistake to cover for the first one.
You wanted it for that night. So that card, the Britain card, I had a barbecue at my house and I had all my friends there and all of them left except one. It's like midnight. We're sitting in my backyard and I'm just watching the last 3 fights. I had Bobby Green, Curtis Blades, Leon Edwards. And it just went to the point that I was just like, you need to leave. I need you to leave. I need you to get an Uber and go home right now.
I just need to be alone with my thoughts for a moment. Oh, that is brutal. Oh man, no, hey, I've been against Alonzo Menifield for a long time, man. I've been sounding the alarm that Leon is the most fraudulent top 5 fighter in this weight class for an even longer time. I don't
even like Leon. I don't even like Leon. I'm just like JD. I mean, that fight's going to happen, and we're going to break it down when it happens. But, like, JDM, he's good. The guy's got a lot of holes. You know, he's been this close to losing, like, 4 fights in the UFC against much lower tier competition.
He's pulling the Sean O'Malley and the Patty the Batty.
No, man, he's pulling a rabbit out of his fucking ass. That's what he's doing.
I'm just saying, instead of losing these fights, he's finding ways to win them, and then the UFC is giving him enough time for the next one to improve. So, like, it's that you wait too long, man, where all of a sudden you're going to be on the Sean O'Malley train laying minus 200 on him when he loses to Merab. That's what happens. They trick you with that shit. You're going to keep trying to fade JDM, and he ain't losing. He just is not going to lose. He's going to go all the way up the chain.
I bet Hafez against him. I bet Gilbert Burns against him. I bet Kevin Holland against him. I bet Ramazan Ameev against him. Yeah, it's been rough.
Tough scenes.
It's been rough. Yeah.
John, just don't do it this time. Just
let this one go. Let it off the hook.
He's gonna volume up Leon Edwards, man. It's happening. I'm telling you. Chalky Bets, my guy, second dono of the night. Thank you very much. You're welcome for answering the look into the future question there. Let's get
maybe I just answered my own question there. It's like I've had this little success. I should probably, to your point, just let it go.
Hey, I'm trying to learn that lesson myself, man. I'm trying to learn that lesson myself. Gene Silva, guys, taking on Melsik Baghdasaryan. This is probably the next 2 fights, man. The next 2 fights are probably fight of the night. Actually, you know what? The top end of this card is really freaking good.
Bad.
The next 4 fights all should be absolute bangers. Now, Gene Silva, you guys know the fighting nerds are just taking over the MMA world right now. I could not have been more wrong about this guy, John. I miscategorized him is what happened because I thought Gene Silva was like a miniature version of like an Ion Cutelaba, just a wild man who bites down on his mouthpiece and goes for broke. And I just thought when he hit a certain point that it was going to cap out and that eventually someone was going to be able to turn the tides on him, wear him out, make him tired, hit him with something big, and he just wouldn't be the same guy anymore. Turns out he's not an Ion Cutelaba. He's a miniature Dustin Dricus Duplessis. He's a miniature DDP. This guy just never stops. He's not necessarily the cleanest, but he is the most aggressive. He's incredibly fast, and he just refuses to quit. Even when it looks like he's tired, he finds that second wind and that second gear. He still steps on the gas, bites down on the mouthpiece, and swings. Like, now that I'm aware of what this guy really is, count me in on Gene Silva here. 14-2, 28 years old. The Dober fight. Like, I just got to talk about the Dober fight, man, because incredible I really thought short notice.
I bet Drew pretty big.
Yeah. I was like, this is the one. This is the one. Like, there's no way this absolute nut job wild man moves up a weight class on a quick turnaround and takes on a guy like Drew Dober and can handle that power. That 10 pounds means something. It meant nothing. Gene took everything Drew had to offer, fired back, busted him up instead. I mean, it's a good thing they call him the Crimson Chin because he took some serious shots from Gene Silva, and he was the one looking like he wanted out of that cage after a couple of minutes. It was impressive what he did. Dober was saved by the bell in round 2. I know he got finished in round 3 with the cut, but like he was on skates at the end of round 2, got hit by a spinning elbow, and it just, writing was on the wall. This thing was done. Fighters out there, anybody who signs a contract to fight Gene Silva, my suggestion to you, bring a brick into the cage with you. Like, you're going to need it. Like, this guy is just absolutely not going anywhere with punches and kicks. Melsik Baghdasaryan, 33 years old, 8-2. Kind of, I thought Melsik was going to be good. What Gene Silva is.
He's pretty good.
He's good. He's really good. I love this guy's kicks. He damages people big time. That best weapon of his is that left side body kick. And this is going to be a southpaw versus orthodox matchup. I know usually, guys, I'm not the guy giving you those kinds of stats, but it matters because that left side is going to be open. It's going to be the left kick of Melsik versus the right hand of Gene Silva. And baby, I am here for it. Give me the violence. He's greatly improved on his takedown defense and his get-up game more specifically. That's kind of the thing, is no one wants to stand with Melsik. I don't think Gene's going to be too afraid to stand with Melsik. Melsik's only 2 losses come by way of submission. He can go high volume when he needs to. You know, on Dana White's Contender Series, he put up over 100 significant strikes. 65 to 75 significant strikes in a 15-minute fight seems to be about his average since that point, if he's not getting the finish, obviously. Melsik will be 2 inches taller. He'll have a 1-inch reach advantage. Damn, bro. This is the fight where, like, the gambler in me just looks at this and screams that this number is too wide. But I have also paid my dues, and I have misjudged Gene Silva, and I've paid the financial price for it. I am not doing it. I know this number is too wide, but 2024 taught me that the number doesn't freaking matter on these favorites sometimes. I think Gene Silva is going to win the fight. I think this is going to be an absolute brawl. I think it could be like the Qatar, the Calvin Kattar plus 5.5, which was just a gift from God if you played the spread on that this past week, because it was just obvious it was going to be a close fight. If you want to play the spread on Melsik, the problem here is Gene Silva can submit this guy. Like, there's no guarantee it goes the full 15 minutes because Gene is so damn well-rounded. He might be able to get it to the ground. Whether it's like a knockdown that gets it there, not necessarily a takedown, Gene could tap this guy. So, like, yeah, man, it's favored or pass for me. Usually it's dog or pass. It's favored or pass. I'm saying Gene Silva keeps on rolling.
Favorite or pass at minus 560. Homie, what are we doing?
I'm just not touching.
Okay, so I'm going to say 2 conflicting statements here. First being, I faded Gene Silva with Charles Jourdain. I bet William Gomez, who missed weight, and then I bet Drew Dober, who lost. Having said that, I know I just went on the screed about JDM, but, like, I think Gene Silva is the absolute truth. This guy is good. He's a nasty counterpuncher. He's got nasty power, and he's got just crazy hardware for the division. But I'm not really looking to fade Gene Silva. I'm not. However, looking at the number, I'm just like, all right, Melsik Baghdasaryan's got a lot of holes in the grappling. But is Gene Silva likely to exploit those holes? I know he's grappled here and there in his career, but if anything from his tape, I would say that is one of the weaker parts of Gene Silva's game. Like, I know Colin Anglin and Tucker Lutz had some success, or not Colin Anglin, he did not have success grappling. But, like, the only 2 grapplers Melsik's fought are 3 are Bazooka, Anglin, and Lutz. And that's a low bar to clear, but I'm not sure Gene Silva clears it. Now, he's an electric striker with great durability, great power, and great speed. But he's going to most likely fight Melsik where Melsik wants to fight. And I am not so – I don't think Melsik's running for the title or anything like that. There's too many holes in his game. But the kid, to your point, is a very good striker. He's got a nasty rear body kick. He's very fast. He is very sharp even with his hands. He picks up on reads very, very quickly in fights. I just look at it, and in my head, I'm like, yeah, to your point, it's like the rear kick of Melsik taking on, like, the right hand of Gene Silva. I have this, like, I shouldn't even say suspicion. Like, my instinct is there's going to be a lot of staring between the 2 of them because Gene is not, for as violent as he is not overly aggressive. He's almost similar. He's much more technical, but similar to Chaos Williams in some respects that, like, he wants to get your movement out of you and then go and unload his stuff. But Melsik's kind of like that too. So I feel like there's a high likelihood we get a lot of staring in this fight. And if that's the case, it's probably going to be a pretty close fight because both of them have weapons I think they can use and are exploitable in this fight. I favor Silva. I think he's got the better hardware here. I trust his cardio a tad bit more than Melsik's, and he's got more power in his hands. But Melsik's a very skilled kickboxer, and if you actually were to look at like the numbers and like the distance striking numbers, now granted, Melsik's have come against a lower level of competition, but they're superior to Gene Silva's. Almost no one touches this guy on the feet. He's very, very hard to get to and very, very hard to find on the feet. I'm not saying I favor him. Again, I think Gene is going to be a top 5 to 10 guy in this division. Melsik, I think his skills are kind of capped to like top 20, 25. But I think he's a good fighter. And I don't think, unless Gene flexes some grappling we haven't seen yet, it's extremely difficult for me to imagine Gene Silva looking minus 560 in this fight. I think it's much more likely the fight looks pick him or favorite Melsik than Gene Silva minus 560. Now, I don't think it will look that way. I don't think it will look favorite Melsik, to be clear. But I think that is much more likely than Gene Silva looking like he's in a different class than Melsik Baghdasaryan is.
It's Zalal versus Kattar.
Yes, but no, except the difference is Calvin Kattar had a major knee surgery. He's 37 years old. He's taken a shitload of damage. Baghdasaryan hasn't fought that much. And when he has fought, he's
been off.
My guess is that it has something to do with visas, from the part of the world that he's in. But I'm not sure. It's just my guess. So, that seems to be the case with a lot of those guys.
So I'm glad I mentioned that because I literally just pulled up Tapology while we're talking about this for this. So he was scheduled to fight William Gomi in 2024, a year ago, and Gomi pulled out. Since then, he was booked to fight twice, Haider Amil and Muhammad Naimov. Baghdasaryan withdrew against Haider Amil. It doesn't list a reason for that withdrawal, but he was the one that went out, which always, makes me sus that something went wrong there.
Especially because he'd whoop Haider Amil. Badly.
And then the Naimov fight, it says specifically Baghdasaryan torn labrum. That was June of 2024.
That's less good. That is a bit more concerning. But he's not, look, at the end of the day, I'm not betting a plus 125 here, right? I'm betting a plus 410, who I think in terms of striking competency is on that level. Like maybe he's not as good an athlete, but I do think they're on the same level. And I know Gene Silva's from Fighting Nerds. And I was having this conversation with someone today who was like, Fighting Nerds guys have great game plans. And I'm like, okay, but how many of those guys proactively grapple? Kaio doesn't fucking proactively grapple. And he's the best grappler in the whole group, Yeah. They're probably going to strike it out here. And Gene Silva's great. I cannot get to this number. Maybe it's a square dog at plus 400. Sure. But I'll take the bait. Feed it to me. I am going to take the bait on Melsik.
Recovery from a torn labrum, depending on the severity and whether or not surgery was required, can take up to 6 weeks before you start seeing significant improvement. But to make a full recovery can take up to a year, especially for athletes requiring to return to high impact activities.
Fair, but that's also, these guys are pro fighters. They're hurt all the time, No,
that's true. I'm just that's new knowledge to me. I did not have that when we started the show.
we need to get like is there a doctor in the comments who can confirm that? But
I know, right?
Confirm ChatGPT is correct. Yeah.
What's the guy on Twitter? Who's the MMA doctor? I need to get him here on the show for this.
I'd actually genuinely be curious because that is something that could make a difference in a line like this. But like from a fight perspective, there's no way the line's correct. It's just not possible. So.
Yeah, I've got serious PTSD from when I had money on Jamal Hill and he came out with 2 knee pads on. Like that's just, it's the worst feeling in the world, man. Your fighter's walking out and you're like, here we go. I get to prove all the haters wrong. Like everyone's just gonna suck it and gargle my balls after this fight. And then he pulls his coat off and you're like, are those knee braces? Okay, left knee brace I can hand. Is that both knees? He's got 2 knee braces. Fuck! It's the worst feeling ever, man. So now you guys know, torn labrum, Melsik Baghdasaryan, maybe a little something to that line being a little bit longer. Darren, I don't know if you have any credentials whatsoever, but he's saying 8-month recovery before 100% training.
Yeah, I'd like to see. Can I get a LinkedIn link there? Can you drop a LinkedIn in the comments? please?
I know, right? We need to check those medical records there, buddy. What'd you score? What'd you score on the test? Anyway, like I said, favorite Gene Silver, nothing for me. Plus, I don't know if you guys saw my stuff online, but the Lord tattoo that he's got like on his body, guys, he used the God of War font for that. Newfound level of respect for my boy
true.
Gene Silva.
Bo is
God
saying,
of War
why
video
lose your
games
money
are
again
goated.
and again? I feel like Keone Barcelos wasn't losing my money. Neither was Marab. You know, it's so easy to remember losing 2 or 3 plus 300s in a row. And then it's like, oh, wait, it only takes one to actually make all your money back on all of them.
That's the part that a lot of people online don't understand, because it's true. If you get your one long shot underdog, it breaks you even for a lot of misses. So you just need to catch a couple of those bounces. That's how that works. But not everybody.
And
likes
I'll say this
high
to your point, Clint, because you brought it up earlier. And I've been talking about this on our show since the start of the year. But like last year was like a historically great year for favorites. Like
it was awful.
Literally insanely great year for favorites. And the market, you can even see it at the end of the year, started pricing them higher and higher and higher. And I kept hearing from people, oh, it's this new meta. And it's like, no, it's not. The market's going to do what the market's going to do. But eventually it's going to overcorrect way too far. And the other side is going to start winning, which has been happening this year.
We're finally getting that pullback.
Guess what? Betting minus 300s or more didn't suddenly become a plus EV strategy that every genius on Twitter figured out. You know, like it's just variance. That's how the game works. It is what it is, you know.
And that's why you got to be on your toes, because that's when the favorites just cash over and over and over and over. Finally, thank God. Like last week, we had 3-4 dogs hit on the same card.
Yeah.
Like that's MMA for you. Usually you can count on at least 2 underdogs on every single card. It's just a matter of being in the right spots. For full 2024, the whole entire calendar year, it's like you could sweep 3-4 cards in a row, just parlaying favorites. And it just looks so easy. And that doesn't happen in MMA, you guys. That's not the norm. So dogs will bark.
Dude, it doesn't happen in anything. It's happening in fucking football. Like it's not, it doesn't happen in any sport.
This is true. This is true. But we are betting the most volatile sport on planet Earth. I wouldn't have it any other way. All right, guys. Next up, Rob Font takes on Gene Matsumoto. Love this fight. Gene Matsumoto coming in here on exceptionally short notice. I think everybody who knows anything, like if you're the casual person who stumbled across the Die Hard MMA podcast, first off, welcome. We're happy to have you as part of the family. But you should know who Gene Matsumoto is. Everybody else is like, yeah, I like that kid. I like that kid. 16-0, 25 years old, 2-0 run off of Dana White's Contender Series. He is filling in here on short notice, and he is just assaulting the UFC rankings with this move, man. He is taking such a dramatic leap up in competition to take this opportunity here against Rob Font. He submitted Dan Argueta, something that I was impressed with at the time because we kind of thought Dan was a grappling cardio machine type of guy. He finished him late in the fight, which not a lot of people did. Now, maybe less impressive in hindsight, but still, I'll count it as a good win.
It is less impressive in hindsight.
Yeah, unfortunately. Decent decision win over Brad Katona, but man, I remember that fight going much differently. Like, in my memory, he whooped Katona's ass. Watching that fight back, he failed on a lot of takedowns. And the striking was pretty even. And Katona had him busted up a couple times. Katona hits him with, like, this gorgeous step-in elbow that he just never saw coming. Now, to his credit, he takes about 3 steps backwards, shakes his head, gets the cobwebs loose, and he's back in the fight. So he was rocked for just a split second. His recoverability seems insane, but it was still a moment where it was like, oh, Drago is bleeding. Like he can be hurt. You know what I mean? And Brad Katona is not the guy you want to find out you can be hurt against. But I think this guy's got an incredibly high ceiling. He's already a BJJ black belt. He is built like a brick shit house. Very good Muay Thai. Constantly coming forward and pressuring. You'll love to see that. And he mixes up the game really, really well. Like you never know if he's going to assault your legs or if he's going to shoot in for a takedown or if he's going to throw a flying knee. He just hammers chopping leg kicks. He tries to chop down the tree. I think a lot of people are going to have a hard time with the calf kicks of this kid. And he fights at a good, very high pace. I like him. I like him a lot. Now, his opponent in this spot, Rob Font, he's fallen into kind of gatekeeper status at this stage of his life. He is 37 years old. He's a member of the New England Cartel. We see them kind of slipping just a little bit, these guys. But he is just one of the most durable guys you've ever seen. Never been knocked out in this long, illustrious career. Never been knocked out. He's been hurt a bunch. I remember when it looked like he had steak on his face after he fought Davison Figueiredo because he was so busted up in that fight from power shots. Never went down. This guy just loses decisions. Rob Font has still got it, though. Like, he turned back the clock hard on Adrian Yanez, slammed the door shut on Kyler Phillips, which that was... I don't know why, but I'm kind of a Kyler Phillips hater. So it was just so wonderful to watch him turn up in rounds 2 and 3 and cook Kyler Phillips over a 15-minute fight. So Rob Font's still got it. You know, he's a little slower. He's a little stiffer. He doesn't quite have the pop in his hands that he used to. But look at the guys he's been fighting. Jose Aldo, Marlon Vera, Corey Sandhagen, Davison Figueiredo. Like, he's fighting the cream of the crop. And then when he settles into the gatekeeper role, where he's fighting guys who aren't quite there yet, he is shutting them down. He's getting these guys who don't belong to be in the contender circle out of there. So I'm not entirely certain that Rob Font is just a dead man walking in this spot. And I kind of expected to be all in on Gene Matsumoto coming into this fight. The numbers surprised me just a little bit. You have got Gene Matsumoto currently sitting at, why is he not on my screen? For some reason, I'm having a hard time finding him. Let's see here. Gene Matsumoto is currently a minus 180 favorite. Rob Font, the plus 155 underdog. And man, I am kind of tempted to see if Rob Font can dole out one more vet lesson. Rob Font by decision plus 225. Like, that doesn't sound like a bad prop to me here. I think the world of Gene Matsumoto. I just got to wonder if this is too much too soon. At 25 years old, like, you're not knocking out Rob Font. We've already established this, right? Like, I don't think this kid hits as hard as any of the guys Rob Font has fought recently. He does not hit as hard as Marlon Vera. He does not hit as hard as Davison Figueiredo. I'm pretty sure about that. And then seeing him kind of fail on the wrestling against a guy like Brad Katona. If you can't stick to the wrestling game plan for a full solid 15 minutes, that's what you need to beat Rob Font. You know, the guys that are beating him are just washing him on the mat. You know, Corey Sandhagen shocked everybody with that grappling heavy takedown game. It takes a guy like Davison Figueiredo to win these massive moments where you're just cracking him and backing him up. Father Time is coming for Rob Font. He absolutely is. Oh man, it's another one where I just feel a little gross about the price tag considering how young and green this kid is, but I love his game. I'm going to say it's Gene Matsumoto by decision, man. I'm going to say it's Gene by decision. Minus 125 is the number on that one. He's going to be exactly like Youssef Zalal last week, where it gets hairy, it gets scary. He finds a way to win. All the people who pull the trigger on Rob Font, it's going to feel so good. It's going to feel like value, and then you're not going to get the decision in the end. I'm going to stick with the favorite here.
Yeah, it's a weird fight. And like Cade in the chat is how discouraging this opponent must be for Rob Font. Dude, Rob Font's a gangster, man. He's not afraid. You know, this guy comes in and goes to war with everybody. I'm sure he's not discouraged. It's funny because I really wanted to bet Rob going into, or not, I wanted to bet Matsumoto going into tape, I should say, because as everybody in the chat saying, you know, Rob's chin's been going for a while. He's not as fast as he once was. And Rob's style is not the kind of style that ages well. Like, if you don't keep your durability, like Rob likes to get in there and bang with you, you know, he's not going to sit back and just rely on teeps and movement to like stay away from you. He wants to get in and mix it up, throw combinations, throw power shots. And given that his durability is obviously declining, that's not really ideal. And Gene Matsumoto, man, he's a good prospect. He's very, very fast hands, pretty sharp on the counter, very good calf kicks. His wrestling could be a bit better, especially his defensive wrestling, but he seems to counter grapple pretty well, pretty dangerous submission game. I'm pretty high on him, just like you. I think he's a really, really good prospect. Having said that, you know, when I was taping it, I think Rob does a lot of stuff if he fought intelligently that could really make things difficult for Matsumoto. Like, Rob's the better fighter, honestly. I'm like almost 100% positive he's the more skilled fighter at this juncture in their careers. The problem is I don't know if Rob's body has, you know, the kind of durability and hardware it needs for this kind of fight at this point in his career. If you told me Rob's going to fight smart, I think he can win. Like, I watched Gene, and like, Gene's your classic Muay Thai guy. He wants to sit down. He doesn't want to move. He wants to sit down, wait for you, kick, counter, and throw power shots in the pocket. You know, Rob is longer and he's taller, and I actually think Rob's jab could cause Gene a lot of problems with his timing. especially because Rob's not like your normal MMA fighter who only just uses the jab to set up everything else. He'll pump it like 2, 3, 4 times in a row like a boxer, and I think it's going to be there for him if he wants it. The problem is Rob's not going to use it and stay on the outside. He's going to try to get in there with him and swing with him. And, maybe he'll win that fight because he's probably got better defense than Gene Matsumoto does. And Rob's, he's got pretty heavy hands for a bantamweight. But I think Gene Matsumoto has got very good durability from what I've seen. And I think Rob Font's durability is declining pretty rapidly. And it's the kind of fight where, like, if you tell me that this goes 15 minutes and Rob Font doesn't get hurt once, I'm telling you he looks like a big favorite. I'm almost positive about that. I'm at the point with Rob, though, where I just find that hard to believe that if he's executing his game and he's not getting himself hurt a couple times in this fight, because Gene's going to wait there for him and bang it with him like he wants to. And I think Gene's chin is way better than his at this point in their careers. So it's weird because I think Rob's the better fighter. The guy's been around forever. He's a legend. To your point, he's been fighting nothing but the best. But also he's been knocked down, 8 times in his last 4 fights? Something like that. It's starting to get ugly.
Vera knocked him down 3 times.
Jose
did a couple times twice. And these are only the registered knockouts. By the way, I feel like the UFC stats are stingy on the knockdowns.
Davison rocked him bad twice.
Davison should have gotten credit for a knockdown, but did not. Man, the bigger concern for me, 44% takedown defense. Like Kyle's a gas bag. He hit 4 takedowns. Davison hit 4 takedowns. Corey hit 7 takedowns. Like Rob at this point just can't wrestle.
So the Corey fight is what scares me the most because Corey's grappling's gotten a lot better, but you shouldn't be getting held down by him. Kyler's a much better grappler than Gene. Like I was actually really surprised he couldn't consolidate those takedowns. Like I know he was gassed, but still, yeah, literally. So that is a concern, but I don't think Gene's like that good a wrestler, honestly. Like I'd be a little surprised if he's getting robbed down easy. I could
see him going jiu-jitsu though, man. I could see him taking the back and like locking a position
or
down.
locking up a guillotine on Rob's entries. Paul mentioned it in the chat, Paul Dow. But like the under 2.5 being plus 300 seems kind of crazy to me. Like I know Rob hasn't been finished in a long time, but he's flirting with chaos in his last, 5 fights. It's only a matter of time till someone does ice him. Plus, the one time he did get finished against Munoz, he got rocked and he shot. He likes to do that, when he's kind of in trouble. And Gene's got a really nasty guillotine. And on the feet, if Rob's having his way, like he knocked out Adrian Yanez, I'm sure he can knock out Gene Matsumoto. Like plus 300 seems like a huge line for the under. I'm pretty interested in that personally.
With a short notice.
Yeah, yes. And a big step up in competition.
Yeah, maybe we like violence here. I don't hate it.
I like violence here. But my lean in the fight is Matsumoto just because I'll feel bad if I don't bet Rob and he wins, but also if I bet Rob and he gets wobbled like 3 times in this fight and loses, I'll feel worse. So I'm at the point where it's like, dude, I mean, Rob's an OG. Like he's like, he's been around forever, but also he's been around forever and he's fighting a guy 12 years younger than him with way better hardware. Like I'm okay. I'm okay passing on the OG brawler in that kind of a fight.
Completely agree with you, man. Completely agree. Could not be more with you on that. And it does, by the way, look like this is going to be a catchweight fight. So I do not know exactly what the number is, but frankly, guys, I think that favors Gene in an even bigger way.
Yeah.
Because if he's coming in heavy, he's coming in late, he's already the far younger guy, he's going to be more well-muscled. That's a grappling edge that you don't normally get in a fight, where if you just get on top of a guy and sit on his chest, like I think Rob's going to have a hard time dealing with that. So, I will side more strongly after talking it through on the Gene Matsumoto side than I did when we started the breakdown. All right. Co-main event, you guys. We have got Brendan All-In Allen taking on Fluffy Hernandez, another all-time namer here for Anthony Hernandez. You guys know I am a Brendan Allen non-believer. I just am not ready to admit that this guy is legitimately a title challenger. I know he is slick as all get out on the ground. His wrestling looks very improved. I mean, he took down Imavov in his last fight, and that was impressive. Like, Imavov didn't get up for an entire 5 minutes, which frankly, I've been kind of a Nasruddin Imavov non-believer, and when he knocked out Israel Adesanya, he made me pay for that. So I need to turn my opinion around on that guy in a hurry. So I'll give Brendan Allen credit where it's due. Like, his wrestling looked good. He took Imavov down. However, in the Imavov fight, as with the Chris Curtis fight, the longer it got extended, the more you realized in a hurry that this guy just doesn't have cardio. Like, he can go hard early and he can put a lot into stuff early, but then he slows down. Like, you see him settle for positions. He'll take 2 or 3 big strikes at somebody, and then he's got to sit and he's got to reset. He'll shoot a double leg and he'll grab the leg, but then he's almost like Cody Brundage, like hanging on it for dear life. His opponent gets out of it and backs off, and he stays on his knees for a second before he gets up. Like, he's not just that forever fluid in motion guy. He does not have that kind of cardio. And if you don't have that kind of cardio against Fluffy, that's a freaking problem, man. I wish this was a 5-round co-main event, because if it was, I mean, Fluffy would be a -500 favorite if this was a 5-round main event or co-main event instead of a 3-round. The only reason Brendan Allen even has life in this fight is because it's 3 rounds. Fluffy Hernandez is just the most ridiculous. He's Merab at this weight class. Like, he just doesn't stop. That's all this guy does. Now, he has been finished twice. He's been submitted once. He's been KO'd once. I actually kind of thought maybe he had some chin concerns early on in his career, but much like Ricky Simón, we just haven't talked about
concerns, man. Body concerns. That's the real concern with him. I'm telling you, he's soft to the body. It's not great.
No, I'm with you there. I'm with you. And I think Brendan Allen, if he hits him with a knee in the right spot or something like that, he could get a finish in this spot. But it's going to have to happen early, because if it doesn't happen early, it ain't happening. Fluffy will just continue to be like a dog on a bone and maul this guy. Brendan Allen, at his core, at his heart, in his soul, he's a jiu-jitsu player. So you go back, this is actually a rematch, you guys. If you go back and watch the LFA fight where they fought for the first time, it's the same thing then. Brendan Allen will settle on his back. They will scramble, and there will be moments where Allen will reverse and he'll get on top, but then they'll scramble and Allen will again end up on bottom. Fluffy is the more natural wrestler. He's going to look for arm triangles. He's going to look for the rear naked choke. He'll look for a guillotine, but he's going to look to get on top. Whereas Allen will be fine rolling to his back and looking for an armbar or a triangle choke, because that's naturally what he does. This sets up so perfectly for Fluffy to be the one in these scrambles to find his way in top position on Brendan Allen. He will have better cardio over the course of the fight. It's going to be a scramble fest. -250 sounds disgusting when it's a fight where they could just kind of roll all over each other and the judges will have no idea who's winning anything at the end of it. But at the end of the day, I think the visuals will be Hernandez on top of Brendan Allen unless he gets knocked out. So unless Fluffy gets KO'd, I expect him to win a pretty clean decision here, especially as the fight gets deep and Brendan Allen tires out. Fluffy for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think the world of Fluffy. He's basically the middleweight Merab to me. Like, no joke. Very, very similar style fighter, except the difference is Fluffy's a much more dangerous submission grappler than Merab is. He's a much more dangerous finisher in general. He should be fine here. Having said that, it's like I got to max bet Fluffy at -170 against Roman Kopylov. I got to bet Fluffy at -120 against Michel Pereira. Do I want to bet him at -265 against Brendan Allen? Like, not really. I'll say this. I look at it and I think the best path for Allen here is he does have a nasty body kick, and I think that potentially could cause Fluffy some issues, because I do think he's soft to the body. Like, we've seen him hurt to the body like 4 times in his career at this point. It doesn't seem like an accident. And you look at his physique; it's not surprising. He's built like me. He's like a skinnier version. He's like a skinnier version of me. No abs at all. But at the end of the day, I look at it and I'm like, even forget about the cardio for a second, which I do think plays a factor, but it's like, can Brendan Allen stop him from out wrestling him? No, I don't think so. Can Brendan Allen out scramble him? I really don't think so. Even on the feet, I think Fluffy, he's not all that technical, but I actually think he's a harder hitter. He actually cracks pretty hard on the feet, whereas, I mean, Brendan does too, but Brendan is, I don't want to say he's not tough. He is tough, but like, we've seen him hurt a lot of times in the UFC.
He's a quitter. Say it. He's got that quit in him, John. He's got the quit in him.
So like, I look at it and like, I think the paths for Brendan are either hurting Fluffy bad to the body with a kick or catching him in like a guillotine. But Fluffy seems like an A+ scrambler to me. And I do think, even being 3 rounds, the pace this guy puts on, it's just tough to fight it. Like, Brendan was dead gassed out against Kyle Dawkins. Granted, the fight was years ago, but we've seen it a few times where he's like Jacob Malkoun, where he's like really struggled with volume wrestlers. And Fluffy is like the guy when it comes to volume wrestling at the upper weight divisions. So I think the world of Fluffy. I mean, look, people can agree, disagree, because this game's ugly. But you know what? People disagree with me about Merab for 5 years. I haven't had that work out. I'm not saying he'll necessarily be like Merab, but the truth is, this, being a guy with a good chin and elite cardio who's a very good wrestler is like the meta for MMA. It always has been, and it's always going to be. So
very few people are built that way, and if you are, it's a cheat code.
Yeah, I think Fluffy handles him. I actually do think there's value on Fluffy's line. What I'm kind of interested in is that goes the distance is like minus 130 from what I saw, and the over 2.5 is minus 145. Like, not to be disrespectful, but like Brendan Allen is not a bitch. You know, he's not gonna soft tap. You know, like we've seen him. He'll take his beating and like get it done with, and so will Fluffy. So it's like I feel I'm okay fading, you know, a finish or a cardio finish from Fluffy at like 55% implied. I think it should be closer to like minus 185 to go the distance. That's kind of how I'm thinking of playing the fight. Maybe Fluffy decision if the price is good enough, but I don't think it's going to be because he's going to have a huge edge in decision equity. So yeah, I think Fluffy should be fine. I'm interested in the fight to go long.
Okay. Yeah, you and I are kind of reading this the exact same way. Like, I would love to make an argument for Fluffy, but you watch that first fight and just the cardio, the pace.
Oh, yeah.
Allen's able to keep up with those scrambles for the full 15
And
minutes.
I'll tell you this, Fluffy, I think, has gotten better since the first fight. I'm not sure Brendan has.
I will completely agree with you. I think Brendan Allen's striking has gotten better. I don't expect his grappling has gotten any better at all. He did submit Paul Craig, who we know is a gasser, in round 3. He did submit Andre Muniz, who we know is a gasser, in round 3. So like you said, Brendan Allen is not a bitch. He's got that quit in him. If you can make him quit, he will quit, but he's not a bitch. So he can get these late finishes against guys who get tired. Problem is, Fluffy's never going to get tired. I think it's a Fluffy by decision situation where it looks a lot like the first fight, and Fluffy just goes ahead and gets it done. Most of the time, guys, I'm the guy that preaches, you know, rematches are not the same as the first fight. This one feels like it should probably go very similarly to the first fight, unless Allen wins. Like, the only alternative to me is if Allen wins this fight, he probably does it emphatically. It's probably catching him with a knee on his way in. It's a big shot to the body that just folds Fluffy over. Like, that's the way I think.
Yeah, like, what does Allen decision look like? I've been trying to think about it in my head, but what does it look like? Like Allen winning a decision here?
It probably looks a lot like round
moments.
Round one against Imavov, where like if he has wrestling success and controls Fluffy in round 1 when he's fresh, and then in round 2 hurts him but doesn't finish.
Yeah.
Like that's the only way I can think of. Because he's not controlling him for 2 rounds. It could happen for 1. It's not going to happen for 2.
I'd be even surprised if it happened for 1, honestly. I would be pretty surprising to me. But yeah, I agree. I think it's very low percentage. Yeah. No, I'm just like, I've been trying to think about like what it looks like. I'm like, I just keep thinking, okay, Allen could hurt him twice, but I mean, Michel Pereira struggled to hurt. I mean, he hasn't been hurt in a while, to be fair to him, you know.
Correct.
Not since Kevin Holland, like way back in the day.
And we know Holland's got nukes. So like, So
bro, that was like one of the most painful MMA betting. I had like 4 units on Fluffy at Pick'em against Kevin Holland.
Ooh.
And that, I mean, think about like in retrospect, he's like minus 800 against Kevin Holland, like true line, and just gets ice to the body like 30 seconds into the fight.
And what Holland has done since just being a feeder for us to fade this entire time against any grappler in the division. Brutal, man. That's tough. That is a tough break. All right, guys. Main event time, and it's my time to shine, baby. It's a bantamweight main event. Triple C Henry Cejudo returns, taking on Song Yadong, and I love this fight so much. So you guys know I am your bantamweight king. All right, I did take a little bit of a bath in this last fight. My record is just beyond reproach at this point. But I got the fight with Merab wrong. I tried to tell you guys, Merab at that number, you blind bet it. I was convinced that my boy Umar was ready to take the crown, mostly because the position that the UFC put Merab in, it was literally worst case scenario. If it hadn't been for being literal worst case scenario, I probably wouldn't have done what I did. But anyway, I thought Umar was the chosen one. At any rate, I have a very, very good record in this weight class. Henry Cejudo has been my guy. Like, since he got here, I've been just going to war with Henry over and over again, and he's paid out dividends, man. The Demetrius Johnson split, which sketchy as it was back in 2018, like, that really got me going there. The knockout over Marias and TJ Dillashaw, I played both of those. The Dom Cruz fight. It's sad kind of what's happened to Henry Cejudo. Moving up a weight class, I think, was a poor decision. Now, I know he was just absolutely killing himself trying to get down to the weight class below 125, but he's so small. at 135 pounds. His skill set has been carrying him this entire time. His striking, he's explosive. The power has carried. The wrestling ability has carried. The cardio is there. Hell, I thought he beat Aljo. I really thought that decision should have gone his way. I thought Henry Cejudo defeated Aljamain Sterling. And then he took the gamble on himself, you know, that long-ass layoff where he thought the UFC was going to see him as a star, a two-division champ, and nobody bit, so nobody paid him. He just kind of sat on the sidelines for a couple years before finally coming back, and now he's 0-2, you know, losing to Aljo in a heartbreaking manner, and then losing to Merab via Merab. Like, that just, you know, there's nothing you can do. But he looked good early in that fight against Merab, man. He actually dropped Merab on his ass in that fight. He hit him hard in round 1, showing he still got the power. He's still there with it. But by the end of the 3rd round, I don't think Merab's lumped up anybody the way he lumped up Henry Cejudo. Like, Cejudo's face was busted up. And Merab doesn't usually deal damage. It's cardio, it's pace. He wears people out. But you look pretty clean coming out of a fight with Merab. Cejudo did not. Cejudo looked bad. And the Aljamain Sterling fight, I've talked about how he's not a great striker. Same thing. Eyes all swollen up. I know it was a 5-round battle between the two of them, but his face was messed up in that fight too. I just think that Henry Cejudo made a mistake, and he let some of his prime years go where he could have competed with some of these guys. And even though he's one of the best wrestlers we've ever seen, even though, forget that, he's one of the best mixed martial artists we've ever seen. You guys might not want to admit it, but Henry Cejudo in his prime was an absolute motherfucker. It's gone. He's now past his prime. He is now 38 years old. And an Olympic athlete is the type of person like a Daniel Cormier who can compete into their 40s. But he's in the wrong weight class to do it. He's up a weight class, and that's going to make it impossible for him to close the strength, the size, the skill, all those gaps that are going to be extending the older he gets. He can't do it at 135 pounds. Song Yadong, 21-8-1, 27 years old, we think. I'm not entirely convinced he's 27. He might be a little older than that. This might be one of those light on his visa type situations to, you know, get over here. But at the end of the day, it's not like a Gregory Rodriguez situation. It's not like he's hiding as a 38-year-old man. He's definitely still in his prime. He's massive for this weight class. You know, he ran on hard times in that Peter Yan fight. I bet him that night, John. And again, this is another one where I was at my little sister's wedding for that fight. So I did not get to watch it. I didn't get to watch it cleanly. But in my mind, I thought it was very competitive, but everybody online told me that it was a one-sided ass beating, that Petr Yan was easy money. And I went back and I rewatched it. It was very competitive. It was a very competitive fight. So I'm like, you guys all suck at this. It was a very back and forth fight. Song had really good success mixing in some of his takedown attempts. He wilted under the pace and the cardio of Petr Yan. Yan edged rounds 2 and 3, where he would strike in combos, where he'd hit him with like a 3 or 4 punch combo, and then Song would return with a big 1 or 2, and it just wasn't enough to quite close the gap. Even though the numbers ended up being very even in those fights, visually speaking, it just felt like Yan was doing a little bit more. So very, very close fight with a young kid who got a big step up, and apparently the UFC forced him to sit on the sidelines. I heard an interview with him just today that he's been out for a year, not because he was hurt, not because he was injured, not because he didn't want to be in there, but because the UFC did not give him an opportunity to return. The UFC wanted him to sit on the sidelines. And I think a kid like this, we have not seen the ceiling for him. And after getting that level of experience, we're going to see a better version of him after a year-long layoff. He's been in camp for an entire freaking year, and now he's getting a 38-year-old Henry Cejudo, who he's just going to have a massive size advantage over. Man, I don't know that Henry Cejudo can take this guy down the way he has his last couple opponents. Now, he took down Aljo, so don't get me wrong. He'll take down Song, but this is a 5-round fight. I don't think Henry's just going to take Song down and stay on top of him for a full 25 minutes. I just cannot envision that happening because Henry Cejudo has fallen in love with his hands. You know, the only fight that he shot multiple takedowns on recently is the Aljamain Sterling fight where he landed 3. He got 1 against Merab. He got 1 against Dom Cruz. Now, I know the Dom Cruz fight went a little bit short, but he didn't get any takedowns in any of those other fights recently. So I feel like we've got a wrestler who's fallen in love with his hands and his power, and that's not going to work against Song Yadong. This kid is in his prime. He's going to have a size advantage. He'll have a power advantage. it is Song Yadong for me, ladies and gentlemen. Your bantamweight king has spoken. I like Song Yadong as a big favorite in this spot. Again, I hate the line. The secret, you guys, the secret sauce in bantamweight is taking the plus money, because all of these guys are way blown out on any given night. These guys are so close to each other at the top. That's why you take Merab at plus 275. That's why you take Merab against Sean O'Malley at plus 250. That's why you do that. Just over and over, rinse and repeat. Take the dog at bantamweight. Just not this time. Like, you should have taken Merab against Umar. I can't not play Song Yadong in this spot when you've got the age gap, you've got the layoff, you've got the 2-fight skid. Like, this is the big comeback for Henry. And how often do we hear that at 38 years old? How often does it go well?
Bold stance. I'm kidding, obviously. Yeah, I mean, I love Song as a fighter. He's like one of my favorite fighters to watch. Obviously, tremendous brawler. He's not afraid of the fire, walks in there, great volume if you let him get it off. I think his grappling has improved a fair amount over the years. He's obviously, I mean, he's definitely not 26. I would guess he's closer to 34 based on, you know, some of the stuff that came out with Denab Bakkarel saying they were roommates 16 years ago. But just a bold take.
I'm with you. I'm ballparking 32. I think he's 32-ish. Look at that body. No 27-year-old looks like that.
I mean, Song is great. I think he's become a very well-rounded fighter. He's obviously closer to his prime, probably in the middle of his prime, versus Henry, who's not. I generally like to back Song against someone where he's got a huge physicality advantage against, or someone who's going to take it to him, because the guy can sit down there in the pocket with anybody, and his hands are so fast that it's kind of tough to deal with. But I'll be honest with you, I like Henry here. Henry's 38 years old. It's true. It's very possible his downside here is quite low. I haven't decided 100% if I'll bet him or not yet. But like, the thing I've been thinking about is like, okay, so he's off 2 losses, but you could make a real argument that the 2 guys he lost are the 2 best bantamweights in history. You know, Aljo defended the title 3 times, sketchy fashion, a couple of those times. Yeah. But, you know, Aljo he's a very, very tough fighter to deal with. You know, big time out fighter, very long for the division, very athletic, you know, very, very good lateral movement. And, you know, he's a very, very good grappler. Merab is Merab. You know, there's nothing else to be said about it. I just can't put any stock in it. And I also know for a fact that Henry was hurt going into the Merab fight. So I don't want to say that they're not important. They are important. But I'm like, man, like, I'd make Aljo a pretty big favorite against Song even today. Like, I'd make Merab a pretty decent sized favorite against Song today. I look at this fight and I'm like, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. Like, if it turns into a lot of pocket exchanges, it's going to be a good fight for Song. He's going to get his game going. He's going to land body shots. He's going to land much more critical shots. What stands out to me is Henry is very good at neutralizing. Like, you go back and watch the DJ fight, even way back in the day that he won. Personally, I don't think he won that fight. I really don't. I bet him in that fight, actually, like plus 450. But I still, to this day, think DJ won it. But what he did do a great job was of just dictating engagements when he wanted to, just avoiding, staying on the outside, and just picking his spots and picking his shots pretty well. I think against a guy like a Peter Yan, Cejudo would have a lot of trouble, similar to how he did with Merab, because it's someone who's going to go forward on you, and it's not easy to outmaneuver, who he's going to be forced to exchange with. But I look at Song, and like, we've seen guys who want to avoid him and play the outside game have success doing that in the past. Corey Sandhagen, obviously, now that's a different story, just because Corey Sandhagen, he's longer, he's taller. That's kind of his game. But I mean, even Chris Gutierrez, like, you go watch that fight 2 fights ago. Now, Song won that fight handily, but he got outlanded by 10 significant strikes, and he only landed 77 significant strikes across 25 minutes. And in my head, I'm like, you know, Henry's not going to bite down and go in the pocket with Song. Like, he's going to try to just pick his spots with Song. And if Song's not hurting him, what's probably going to happen is you're going to have a lot of rounds that are being decided on like pretty tight margins. And that's the kind of fight where, like, I don't want to say anything can happen, because I'd still favor Song in those kind of rounds. But then you mix in the wrestling, and it's like, well, let's say you favor Song 60% every round, you know, if they're striking. But let's say Henry lands 2 to 3 takedowns. We've seen Song he's flat on his back before. Corey held him down there, and he's not a great grappler. Peter Yan held him down there. Cody Stamann way back in the day held him down there. Henry might only need 2 to 3 takedowns to make this to swing this into being firmly in his favor. Now, will that necessarily happen? I'm not sure. He's 38 years old, to your point. He took all that time off, which probably sapped the prime of his, or not probably, it did sap the prime of his career. But I just think about it, and in my head, I just keep trying to picture it, and I'm like, man, the guys who have tried to avoid the fight with Song, he's kind of let them do it. Like, even if you go all the way back in the day, Vince Morales, he only landed 78 significant strikes against him, ended up in a pretty close fight. Like, he's kind of had close fights with guys that don't want to brawl with him. When guys want to sit down with him, he obliterates them because that's kind of his game. But Henry's a really smart fighter. He's going to have a good game plan. He's got a good doctor in New Mexico or in Arizona out where he is, or out by you, Clint, I should say.
Yeah.
You should actually look into that. You should actually look into that.
I've got connections.
But I don't know. I'm not super, super bullish on Henry, but I keep thinking about it. And in my head, I'm like, unless Song is hurting him a lot, and the amount of guys who have actually hurt Henry on the feet are almost non-existent, I feel like margins are going to be thin, and I feel like Henry getting 2 to 3 takedowns could make a huge difference here. And there is something I think to be said for the fact that, Henry has been they've both been in 5-round fights, but Henry's been in some of the biggest leverage spots you could be in his sports history, whereas Song really hasn't been. Henry's going to stay cool in the fire. Like Aljo fight, there was a very good argument that the fight was 2-2 going into round 5. And, he's in there with a bigger, longer guy who's mostly been having his way and stayed calm, picked the shots, pulled it out. Even against Merab, the dude, he was getting the full Merab experience, the full spin cycle, and didn't really give up late into that fight. So, yeah, I mean, some of that is intangible stuff. And look, Song's on the better trajectory. There's no doubt about that. But I just think about what it would take for Song to actually be 70 to 75%. And to me, it would have to mean Henry's totally done, which there's admittedly a chance he is. I'm not going to say there's not, but I can't say he's totally done off losing to Merab and Aljamain Sterling. That's to me, that's the class of the division.
This feels exactly like Gregory Rodriguez, Jared Cannonier.
It does. That's what I'm saying. I bet Aljo big against him. I max bet Merab against him, and now I'm looking at it and I'm like, Merab was minus 180 against him. Aljo was pick him. And Song Yadong is minus 300? What are we doing? Aljo would turn Song into a pretzel. And we're talking about, how we, okay, I get it. Age is a part of it, no doubt. But this feels like quite the jump. There were a lot of people who were pretty confident in Henry against Merab on the timeline, when that fight happened.
Yep.
They're all gone? They're all gone. He's fighting Song Yadong, a guy who's not great off his back.
People have short memories in bantamweight, man. People have short memories. But that's why I'm right there with you, 1,000%. I do think Daniel here is that's the key to everything, is that Henry can't hold Song down.
And that's really not sure, man.
I think the size really is going to be the difference here, is that I don't think Henry will be able to keep Song down. You go back on that Aljamain Sterling fight, and again, I thought Henry won that night.
I did too. I was there, and I bet Aljo.
But 2 of the 3 takedowns that Henry Cejudo landed, John, they came with less than 60 seconds left in the round.
Yep.
He did not take Aljo down and then dominate position and stay on top of him and maul him and keep him there. That's not what Henry does anymore. He doesn't do it. And he's sealing rounds at the end of a round where he's trying to kickbox with people. So if he's trying to kickbox with Song Yadong, we're talking about a low volume car crash type situation. And I think that's Henry's game plan. And I think Henry believes he will just Marlon Moraes this guy, where at a certain point, he's going to be the one who imposes himself in that situation. And I don't see that happening because Song is so much younger and so much bigger. When they car crash, I think it will take its toll on 38-year-old Henry, and he'll realize it too late. I think in round 2 or round 3, he'll go, oh shit, maybe I should grapple more, and it'll be too late. He'll be too depleted. Song will be still there in those late rounds. And I've seen this kid do the splits defending takedowns. He's so flexible. He's so strong. He's got such good hips. I just don't think the takedowns are going to come as easily as Henry's expecting. And he will probably get some trips. I think that's the best part of Henry's game.
Yeah.
But I don't think he'll be able to keep Song on his back. Song will get up from that And then you got to try again. And you're moving this kid that's twice your size around and half your age around. I just think it's going to take a toll on 38-year-old Henry. I liked Cannonier because we knew Gregory would slow down.
That's true. That is a fair point.
Song Yadong, with blood running down his face in a 2-2 fight going up against Corey Sandhagen in the championship rounds, was begging the commission to back off because he was swinging the momentum of that fight in a tied fight going into round 5. I was going to live bet Song if they allowed that fight to continue because he had all the momentum going into round 5. He's not going to fall off. If anything, Henry is going to get tired trying to move this big body around.
I do agree, and I love Song, so it wouldn't shock me. I don't know, man. I'm telling you, I feel like Henry knows what he's doing, which might not be enough. Him knowing what he's doing might not be enough, but I do trust he's going to have a very good game plan here. I do.
Dude, I am longtime Henry Cejudo supporter. You know, he was my favorite fighter. During the TJ Dillashaw rivalry era, Henry could do no wrong. King of cringe, count me in. Like, I thought he was hilarious. I enjoyed all of it. I've been betting on Henry nonstop and singing his praises for years. I bet against him with Merab because we know Merab better than the rest of the world did at the time. I bet on him against Aljo. I did. I bet against Aljo in that fight because I was ready to fade Aljo.
You want to hear?
I got
a funny story about that fight. I was there. It was in Newark, like 30 minutes from me. I was there with Gambas, and we both bet Aljo. And like round 5 ended, and we were both just like, "Let's head to the exit. We'll like wait by the balcony, and then we'll leave," because he definitely lost the fight. We both were convinced he lost. So we're standing by the door to leave the arena when they announced Aljo the winner, and I was just like, "What?" It was just funny, and it was actually the rare time that I've been, I thought my side lost and won. So.
It's always good. It's always good when that happens. It's good to be surprised. You got to catch a bounce here and there every once in a while. Well, guys, that was UFC Seattle. John and I had a damn good time. The show went a little bit long. So for those of you who subscribe to the name of the show and your diehards, this is the show for you this week. John, my guy, if you've got anything going on this week, obviously your own show, stuff like that, sponsors, deals, whatever, feel free to shout them out. Let people know where they can get more of you and your stuff. The floor is yours.
Yeah. I just did my show last night. It's the Club and Sub podcast. You can find it on YouTube. I do it every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Check it out. You can check me out on Twitter, MMA Fox. Everyone talk fights, anything. I'm always down to chat. So, yeah. Thanks for having me on, Klein. I really appreciate it. I had a great time.
Absolutely, man. Always a good time when you come on the show. Thank you all so much for watching. Obviously, we'll have the Total Takedown on Thursday, the Undefeated Post Weigh-In show on Friday, and I will be posting anything that I lock in for this fight card. So far, I have not bet anything for those of you wondering where the actual bets on this card are. With the way this card's moving around, we're losing fights left and right. I haven't actually locked anything in this, but I do like fluff. I do like off. I do like that's kind of where I'm as my eye, and I will be betting Raffael Cerqueira as this week's dog of the week. Thank you all so much for watching the show. Love you guys. Get out there, be good. Don't let the world weigh you down. We're gonna get through this. Let's roll.